Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. It is currently 12:14 a.m. And of course, today's date is the 3rd of June 2025. It's going really fast, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you for tuning in. Yes, God bless you. God bless the United States. And of course, we are diving deep into what's going on in the United States across country. We heard what happened in Colorado. A lot is going on in the United States right now, but I'm very optimistic that God is in control. Peace will reign regardless of what's going on right now. Peace will absolutely reign. We just have to live as one. Unity is what we need. It doesn't matter if you're liberal or a conservative, it doesn't matter as long as you realize that it's America first, all right? As an American, your priority is to stand up for your country, okay? Even if you believe as a liberal, you don't want to have conservative ideology. It's all right. As a conservative, if you don't want to have a liberal ideology, it's fine. However, we are Americans, whether liberals or conservative. We are Americans. So we owe it to the greatest country in the world to live as one. All right. And with that being said, we still have to show what's going on around the country. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Today's show is America, the Land of Glory. Here we go.
All right, back to our top story. The federal government filing hate crime charges against the man accused of carrying out yesterday's terror attack in Boulder, Colorado. Let's bring in Jonathan Turley now, constitutional law professor and a Fox News contributor. All of us are just sick to our stomachs over this horrendous attack, Jonathan, and now we're learning brand new details. As you just heard with the White House press secretary on moments ago, they found 14 unlit Molotov cocktails at his side in his car when they were making the arrest. This is a man with full intentions to do what he did, and in fact, when confessing to this, said he would do it again. Your reaction to the charges?
Well, it's so hard to be shocked today when you see all the things happening around us, but the utter depravity of this individual, the lack of humanity, just continues to shock the conscience of the nation, and certainly should be shocking to anyone, regardless of how you feel about the conflict in the Middle East. And this is a classic terrorism case. What the evidence shows is that there was preparation, rather deadly preparation. His intention to target
about the anti-Semitism that is happening on college campuses all over this country. This came up in that debate with Federman and McCormick. This was earlier today on Fox Nation. It was a debate on anti-Semitism on our college campuses, Jonathan, and I want to get your reaction out of this.
This is just rampant across all the universities, for all these places too. I mean, we really need to call it what it is. Building tent cities on a campus and terrorizing and intimidating Jewish students, that's not free speech. And now we've lost the argument in parts of my party.
I actually went to University of Pennsylvania, saw these demonstrations, and this wasn't free speech. This was intimidation, in some cases physical violence.
I mean, how can we expect to prevent attacks like this in the future if we're still allowing this to happen on our college campuses, Jonathan?
Well, I commend Senator Federman for his stance. It's a courageous stance. He's now been targeted by the left and has all these attack articles appearing in the media. It's all part of a familiar pattern for some of us who have been dissenters in higher education. The fact is that a lot of this extremism is coming out of higher education, and many of these administrators have ignored complaints for years. We can focus on conduct rather than the content of messages. Much of what is occurring on campuses, exactly as Senator Federman said, is conduct. It's illegal. These are crimes. And only recently universities began to focus on that. I have concerns about free speech, and I've criticized the Trump administration on some of its actions. But there's so much more that we could have done and can still do to protect our students and universities, but also to interrupt this this cycle of radicalism that is coming out of some of the sectors of higher education.
You know, your piece, Marco Rubio declares war on the global censors. It struck me how you ended and landed that piece. Jonathan, this was the ending. Rubio's doing just that, getting serious about the threat to free speech, finally imposing, you say, real consequences for censorship. We are not going to defeat censors by yelling at them. Speech alone clearly does not impress them. What was your message here, Jonathan?
Well, this has been overlooked by many in the media, but Secretary Rubio said that he would deny entry to some of these people who have been taking their censorship programs global, particularly in Europe, where the EU is threatening companies like X that they need to resume censorship of American citizens, even threatening Musk for interviewing Trump before the election. And this is all part of the Digital Services Act, and figures like Hillary Clinton, after Musk bought Twitter, called on the EU to use the Digital Services Act to force the resumption of censorship of American citizens. And Rubio is finally saying enough. And he's saying, I'm going to start to deny entry in the United States. And it's an incredibly important moment. And, you know, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said once, you don't tame a lion by petting it. And we've been petting, or a tiger in his quote, we've been petting this tiger for years. And finally, Rubio is saying, enough. We're going to fight for free speech.
Always appreciate when you can join us. Jonathan Turley on all of that for us. Thank you, sir. All right.
Fox News alert here, a targeted terror attack here in America. That's what the FBI is labeling the alleged firebombing incident in Colorado yesterday. It unfolded at a peaceful march in Boulder, Colorado. And they were there to support Israeli hostages who are still held captive by Hamas. And it is just the latest incident like this that we have seen recently, unfortunately. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Dana Perino.
Morning to you. Nice to see you. On a Monday, I'm Bill Hemmer. 8 people set on fire in what officials say is a targeted act of violence. The FBI saying a man with a makeshift flamethrower and Molotov cocktails was heard yelling anti-Israel slogans during the attack. The victims ranging in age from 52 to 88 years old. The suspect, a man from Egypt, overstayed his visa here illegally, was allowed to remain under a work permit given to him during the Biden administration.
The attacks come as we see a surge of anti-Semitic attacks on U.S. soil. Less than 2 weeks ago, there were 2 Israeli embassy staffers killed by a man who authorities also say screamed, "Free Palestine." And we've seen multiple college graduations disrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters. And we'll have much more on this with Paul Morrow straight ahead. But first, let's bring in Ed Victor. He witnessed the attack in Boulder yesterday. Thank you for being here. We haven't had a witness yet on our show this morning. So let me just turn it over to you to explain what you saw, what happened.
Yeah, and now let me just say back up just slightly in that this walk has been going on since October 7. It happened in 2023 every week. I started walking every week that I can since September 2024. This week started like every other week. In fact, it felt like a more quiet day on the mall. We walk silently, and that presence of just being quiet really makes people notice our signs of saying, run for your lives, bring them home now. And it's really just to raise awareness. We're holding signs of pictures of people who are held hostage in Gaza. It's really just an awareness. And as we walk through the Pearl Street Mall, people notice us by our silence. When we got to the old courthouse, which is on Pearl Street between 13th and 14th Street, we were lining up as we normally do. And I'm sure I walked right past the person with the Molotov cocktails. I lined up, I was standing, I remember looking west towards the mountains, talking with somebody. Suddenly I felt a lot of heat. I turned and I saw a person on fire. And my immediate goal, as well as 2 or 3 other people, was to get the fire out. That's what we had to do. And we grabbed some flags, we grabbed some banners, did what we could. It was horrible, and it maybe took 1 or 2 minutes. Just felt like it always took too long to get the fire out.
Yeah.
Ed, you say you've done this many times over the past year, participated in this walk.
Yeah.
Does that mean that people would know that you and your group would be there at a certain time on a certain day yet again?
Absolutely. Yep. We have it scheduled and it's known. Yep.
Ed, can I ask you about some of the other people who are walking with you? As I understand it, and I think it's a beautiful thing to do, right? That you had some elderly people who are still active and able to do this walk every week, but it was so meaningful to them to be a part of it, and then this happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's children, it's families, it's older people. It's a community of anybody anywhere in America, and we're just walking. And so we recognize each other, different people on different days of the week.
Yeah, Ed, two things. How many were you yesterday? How many are
yeah,
you?
Good question.
How many are you normally? And what did you hear the suspect say?
Okay, first to answer the first question, it was about 30 people. And so sometimes it's a little larger, sometimes a little smaller. I'll say it was a typical week. It was good to see everybody. I really, in a lot of ways, I don't know what I heard him say. I heard videos, but my thinking when it happened is my world became singly focused on this person getting the fire out and then comforting her husband who was burned and distraught. And I just remember us holding him, just being with him, being present. And I never felt my world just get so narrow to only focus on the two people who I was with. And I'm sorry, I can't answer that better.
Yeah, will you come back and march again?
Absolutely. I want to do it next week. It's up to the organizers to decide what they want to do. I will say I always felt safe in Boulder. I never, ever, ever would have thought this would have happened.
Yeah, I know. Ed Victor, thank you. We're glad that you're all right. Thank you for trying to help those who were injured, and we'll stay in touch with you.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you. Appreciate the call. Bye-bye.
Yet another horrific anti-Semitic terror attack on U.S. soil, this time by an illegal immigrant let in by the Biden administration. He overstayed his visa. Mohammed Sabri Solomon appearing in court soon. He's accused of launching a targeted terror attack, firebombing peaceful demonstrators in Boulder, Colorado, using a makeshift flamethrower as they rallied in support of Israeli hostages. The number of victims in yesterday's Boulder attack has now increased. It is now 12. Thankfully, no one has died, but the injuries are terrible. And according to the FBI, the attackers shouted "Free Palestine" during the assault.
We can't do nothing. We can! Not here! You have to end Zionists! Not here, bro! You're not! Video right now.
And the Trump Justice Department charging the suspect with a federal hate crime, and that's on top of 16 counts of attempted murder and other charges. The White House is now vowing a crackdown on those who abuse the visa system as well.
After coming to this country under Joe Biden's administration, he is lighting Jewish people on fire who were simply trying to peacefully pay respect to the hostages in Israel. I would remind anyone here who is on a visa like this individual in Boulder, Colorado, came to our country. It is a privilege, not a right, to enter the United States of America. And we are not going to allow people who are pushing anti-American values and especially engaging in acts of violence to remain in our country. Your visa will be revoked and you will be deported.
The FBI immediately labeling it as a targeted terror attack, but some guests on CNN, including a former FBI deputy director, taking issue with that characterization.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. All right. Yes, we are back. We actually just started like 15 minutes ago. So shout out to the GOAT, Luke. Thank you for tuning in, esteemed member. God bless you. All right, we have another great person in the house, C. Shelley, another great moderator in the house. Okay, Enders in the game. Okay, Enders. Here we go. All right, it's about to be a show. Let's respect each other in the comment section, okay? And it doesn't matter if you're a liberal or a conservative. It doesn't matter, okay? You are an American. All right, so enjoy the show and let's know what you think. Here we go.
The local authorities are saying one thing, and the FBI is saying something slightly different.
Yeah, that's never a great start. He is really being very, very careful, and I think that's the right approach at this point. They don't have a clear idea.
It makes law enforcement look disorganized, and it makes the FBI look so juvenile. Like, why are you getting ahead of the police chief?
The guy literally lit a Holocaust survivor on fire, and the media suddenly cares about waiting for more facts while he yelled "Free Palestine" and more. Greg, I was thinking about how you and I have been doing the show for nearly 14 years, and the terrorism cases and attacks, they have morphed. And now we always worried about this, like what about the attacks from within? And now you are seeing this. There is a pattern, and this is just one more in a horrible set of instances.
You know what's interesting is there is a pattern that hasn't changed, and it's the media's focus on the reaction of the attack and not the attack itself. So why would they do that? Why is it more important to them to talk about the labeling of this? Because they know that they're complicit in what happened before. They'd rather not talk about what could have been prevented. For example, when you elect a crumbling president, you have a crumbling border. That is the best cause and effect you're ever going to see. The reason why this guy was able to get in was because Biden was president. You don't want to talk about that because then you're complicit. So you focus on the reaction after. Did you see what Stephen Miller said? Did you see what Donald Trump said? If I were to say, right now, is there a study? Has anybody ever done a study on the most common first name among terrorists? It's just a question. I bet that will get more coverage than the terrorist same media who called everyone Nazis and white supremacists if they so much as raise their hand above their shoulders, and yet they have a brazen act of terror and they go, not so fast.
There's also a trend and a pattern, Jesse, emerging that you'll see in headlines or you'll see from people like the UN General Assembly, Antonio Guterres. He says this.
Or even Tesla terrorism. It's not economic terrorism. It's property damage. You see this also. Greg mentioned it again. The guy was called white. I mean, he's born in Africa. He's an Egyptian alien Muslim. It's like if this guy had gotten away, what would the media have said? Be on the lookout for white man last seen with a cocktail. This is dangerous the way they're reporting it, and they're reporting it this way because their own voters are chanting the same slogans as the terrorists. The border policy is dangerous, and now Jake Tapper's even admitting that Joe Biden has caused the border crisis. And it's also because they are afraid to alienate the Hamas wing of their party. The Hamas wing of their party is very powerful, very influential.
Of 2023 have met peacefully, and they walk silently on Sundays in Boulder. And it's to raise awareness, to try to make sure that they have their message out every week that there's a demand to bring all of the hostages home. So this guy knew about that. Right, and he's there, he's prepared. He's
just gotten back from touring it, and I was sitting at a restaurant in Krakow, Poland, and what walks by? A pro-Hamas demonstration. 50 kilometers from Auschwitz, and that is allowed, and people in the cafe I was sitting at started clapping. And I admit that I jumped up and started shouting and yelling at these people who were somehow able to shout on the watch list that also enjoyed coming over the southern border under Biden's watch. This guy planned this attack for a year, he said. For a year. He wanted to wait till his daughter graduated before setting women on fire. The kind of women that the mainstream media doesn't care about because they only care about trans women. So he got to enjoy his daughter's graduation, having zero thought for these victims, the Holocaust survivor who might not get to enjoy any future graduations. Final quick point. According to the publishings, his date of birth is December 1979. That makes him younger than I am. I call no way that's a fake ID.
All right. Harold, we had a
straight up fake ID, ladies and gentlemen.
Newsroom today. He was one of the protesters. He has joined, and I asked him, do you think you'll continue? And he said, absolutely. And Daniel.
Group of persons or a particular person. That's clearly what this was, too. We have too long of a history of people believing for some tragic reason that they can act violently to express their opinions. I have no allegiance to any of the opinions this guy shared as it relates to Israel. However, he has every right to express it. What he does not have the right to do is to be violent. And I would hope one of the things we've talked a lot about, they can have better collaboration going forward. But we should run a list of all of these people whom are here illegally now, use AI as a tool to help us understand, have they said things, done things, aligned with people, organizations, and make them more dangerous? Those are the people whom also, as Mr. Homan has said, we want to get the criminals out first with their deportation policy. These are the very people we should be getting out as well.
You can have your own opinion about Gaza and Israel. However, we should not resort to committing crimes. We should not result in harming our fellow brothers and sisters just to show that we are serious about our convictions. No. That's why using your words is very important. You have to be able to use your words, or better still, write a book, or start a YouTube channel, or I don't know, do something else, wear a t-shirt rather than doing this. Or get is absolutely wrong. So whatever he gets, he deserves it. Okay. You should not be trying to prove a point by harming people. It's just not American.
The federal terrorism charges are probably
were actually on his side, arguing for him, which didn't make sense. Hats off to the officers who made it there quickly so that they could arrest him. Dan Bongino, Dan Bongino, the FBI number 2 there, said the leadership team is there on the ground with the FBI. The National Counterterrorism Center is there, according to Tulsi Gabbard, and local law enforcement is also investigating.
But here's the thing. Here illegally. Asked for asylum during the Biden years. They said no, but they kicked it out. Then somehow he gets a work visa to stay. Does anyone interview these people?
But Brian, it expired in March. Yeah. So he shouldn't be here.
Shouldn't have been extended to begin with. This is why Tom Homan and what the military is doing at the border and our great border patrol is doing matters as much too. We got to get these people who are breaking our laws. Stop telling me they belong in the community and they're one of us. They go to the blue states, the blue cities, where they can thrive, and in this case, attack.
Not just that, Brian, what Marco Rubio is doing with the visas as well at the State Department. If you don't love this country, if you're going to cause harm to people in this country, you got to go. Yeah. Let's bring in former...
And that's my thing about this, people. You come into the United States, but you claim that the United States is not the greatest country in the world. You keep saying that, some people even say unalive the United States. That's why I came to the United States. And I love the United States. That's why I do what I do. So why would you come into the United States with the mindset to hurt people, to commit crimes? Why didn't you just stay where you were? Why? You came into the United States because you know it is a land of opportunity. Everybody knows that. Every human being in this world, no matter what they say about the United States, they know that the United States is the land of opportunity. If you apply yourself, if you put your head down, if you work as hard as you can, save your money, don't get into crazy debt that you cannot afford, you will get your chance to live the American dream. Everybody knows that. That's why everybody wants to come to the United States. Yet, you come into the United States to commit crimes. How does that make any sense? I don't get it.
Deputy Envoy Combat and Anti-Semitism, Eli Kohanim, onto the program. Eli, we want to get your general reactions to what's happening here, but a few questions about what's happening when it comes to the protest there. They're saying from the river to the sea. They're saying a global intifada, and they're saying free Palestine. What does that mean? Because these same people that are committing these acts of terrorism are saying those same chants.
Lawrence, that's an excellent question, and I think that this latest heinous terror attack against Jewish Americans by this foreign national who burned Jews alive yesterday has to be a wake-up call for every American. I call upon all Americans to now stand up with your Jewish neighbors and friends and say enough ends with the Jews. And so truly all Americans are potential victims for these failed immigration policies.
Ellie, I've interviewed the lawyers for the hostage families. They have got a direct line between Iran, the Hamas, and these college kids on campus who are a lot of times in their late 20s and 30s. Like Mahmoud Khalil is 30 and graduated from graduate school. They don't belong here. What are you doing? Number two is this has got to be unwound. We can't just say, oh, this crazy guy came to New York, did something, came to D.C. or blew up Josh Shapiro's house and then just burned somebody alive in Boulder, Colorado. These are just crazy people. There is direct links. That's right. And we're good at doing that. Ever since Al-Qaeda and 9/11, we've pulled back on that. But we got to get back to that right now and start identifying the direct line to Gaza and Iran.
Exactly right, Brian. And look, this is part of what the Trump administration is doing in the short time that President Trump and the admin is now back in office. So what you're pointing to, Brian, is indeed the links between what's happening here on U.S. soil and foreign countries like the Islamic Republic of Iran. Look, under Biden, the DNI at that time Avril Lavigne came on the air and said that Iran was in fact funding some of the pro-terror, pro-Hamas movement on our campuses, and that perhaps unbeknownst to our American students, they were actually in touch with Iranian agents. So yes, this is absolutely correct that we've got foreign countries that are funding, perhaps organizing some of this activity.
They told the hostages that.
Yes.
They told them that in the tunnels.
That's right.
While they're being held, he says, we have links and we have supporters in American campuses. They told us that.
Yeah. Ellie, what's so disturbing about this is they were protesting. This group is called Run for Their Lives because that's what the hostages were trying to do. And they meet weekly to have these marches. They run and they walk, the organizers and participants do. And they meet there in Boulder, Colorado, just to support getting these hostages out so that they can come home. And I thought last night when I was watching this breaking news, if I wanted to go to one of these marches, I might think twice now because I'm worried about copycats.
Well, that's exactly right. And that Ainsley, is what terrorism is. What terrorism does is that it aims to silence good people. It aims to scare all Americans from speaking up against this kind of hatred, for trying to bring attention to the plight of the hostages, which this group of Jewish Americans was doing yesterday. But look, we cannot let the terrorists win. We cannot let these foreign nationals who come onto our soil silence Americans and try to somehow impact our values. So we all need to stand with the Trump administration as they seek to deport the foreign nationals who are here illegally. We need the sanctuary city governors and mayors to wake up. This is a wake-up call and stop these policies, because these policies are not victimless. Again, yesterday it was Jewish Americans. Tomorrow it can be anyone. Anyone in this country could be targeted by these illegals who are here. So I would say these Democrats have to just get out of the way and let the Trump administration succeed in the policies that they're trying to put forward.
Or use this as an opportunity to combine with the Trump administration. Chuck Schumer, Jared Polis, Governor Shapiro. So how about a press conference with Trump officials saying, we got to stop this, right? Well, what would be the problem about doing that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that would be great if we could be bipartisan and really face the facts that anti-Semitism, standing up to anti-Semitism should be bipartisan. I grew up in this country. I remember when that was the case. I remember when Democrats could stand up with the Jewish community and could stand with Israel. It's really sad to see how the Democrats have devolved to where they are today. So I'm with you, Brian. I also would welcome Chuck Schumer to stand with President Trump and stand up against anti-Semitism. We don't need any more tweets from Chuck Schumer. We don't need him. We don't need him to write books. Exactly. We don't need prayers. We need action from these Democrats. And the first thing they can do is stop their sanctuary city policies.
And the second.
Facts. Absolutely facts. If you want to come to the United States, you need to come the right way. Okay. You have to come in the right way. It is just how it should be. All right. And if we are having known enemies supporting this protest in American universities, that's not good look at all. That's not even right. All right, Tom Holman, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, Borders are Tom Holman. Tom, let's get your first reaction, your first public comments on this issue out in Colorado.
Me and you have been talking about this for years, Sean. I mean, I worked for the network just before I came back to the second Trump administration. And I've said over and over again, what scares me about the southern border, the sex trafficking, right? Sky high. The Americans dying from fentanyl. The people, all the drugs coming across, all the sex trafficking, all the smuggling. And I said what concerned me the most was they created the biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen. not only did 2 million known gotaways, 2 million people cross the border, we don't know who they are, where they came from, we don't know where they are now. On top of that, even through the legal process, the Biden administration were bringing people unvetted, handing out work visas like they're candy, while they sat here and planned something bad. We are going to be dealing with this for the next 10 years because of the chaos they created in 4 years. We're out there kicking butt. We're arresting a lot of criminal aliens. We're out there looking for the bad guy. And when we're out there doing that, Sean, we got protesters assaulting ICE officers. We got members of Congress all over the country going to ICE facilities, raising hell, saying this is their oversight responsibility. Where were their oversight responsibility when 10.5 million illegal aliens came across the border? Where's the oversight responsibility on releasing over 8 million illegal aliens to this country? Where's the oversight responsibility then? This is an attack on ICE. This is an attack on the Trump administration. We're trying to fix the damage done by Biden.
You're doing a great job, and this was the most preventable national security threat, I would argue, in history. I have annoyingly asked you the question over and over again. When you have known terrorists and murderers and rapists and cartel members and gang members in the country, and you have them, 12 million, 15 million, 20 million, nobody knows the actual number. And what did we learn from 9/11/01? They were at war with us. We were not at war with them, the 9/11 Commission report. They're plotting, planning, and scheming. This is a terror attack. I'm worried about the big terror attack, and of course my prayers, my thoughts, my sympathies go out to the victims here. But do you not agree that if we don't find these people soon, that we are at risk of a 9/11 or worse?
It's coming. I mean, why did 2 million illegal aliens pay more to get away? They could have paid half of what they paid, cross the border, turn yourself into a border patrol agent, get released that same day, get a free airline ticket to the city of their choice, get a free hotel room, get 3 meals a day, plus free medical care and work authorization. 2 million people paid more to get away. They didn't want to be vetted. They didn't want to be fingerprinted. Why? This scares the hell out of me. I've been doing this for 40 years. It should have scared the hell out of every American what the Biden administration did. This 2 million known gotaways scares the hell out of me. So I'm convinced something's coming unless we can find them.
They came from over 200 countries. We don't know how many. We know there are terrorists here. I mean, you've taken on Mission Impossible, as great a job as you're doing, but to find every single one of them, I don't know how you do it. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to.
Hopefully, nothing crazy happens. Hopefully, because this is just wild. All right, Jesse Waters.
Biden world's starting to crack, and the big guys getting the whistle blown on them. Secret Service agents are coming out of the woodwork, saying behind the scenes, Joe was even worse than we thought.
This Secret Service whistleblower actually was assigned to Biden, and he told me that Biden used to get lost in his closet in the mornings in the White House. I mean, the guy literally stumbling around in the White House residence couldn't find his way out of his own closet. The president of the United States. I mean, this is outrageous.
The leader of the free world couldn't find his way out of the closet, and no one noticed. Joe was locked inside while his team was out running the country. The speaker said when he went to the White House, Biden didn't even know what he'd signed off on.
Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed.
Joe Biden didn't even know what the Biden foreign policy was. That's how bad it was. Democrats all knew Joe's brain was fried.
There's a Senator Bennett from Colorado who went to an event in June 2024 where Biden seemed non-functioning, and he left that event, and this is in the book, thinking this is why our border policy, our immigration policy is such a mess. This guy can't manage the portfolio. There are competing groups within the administration, and he's not engaged for whatever reason, and that's why this policy is such a mess.
Did Biden even know the border was wide open? If he didn't, then who opened it? That's what the hearings will find out. Bill Maher, he's wondering why Democrats even let Joe run.
If you really thought Trump was the existential threat he was, then, to your point earlier, why put up Biden? If it was really that important. I mean, Democrats will never be able to answer that question. If that election was really that important, you couldn't summon the courage to confront an old man that your time has passed?
Oh, that's a good question.
Democrats knew Joe was fried back in 2020, and they all backed him up. On the campaign trail, he was forgetting the names of aides he'd worked with for 40 years. Staffers were alarmed and would whisper how the big guy wasn't 100%. They thought it was a miracle that COVID happened and Joe went into the bunker. But Slick Willie swears for 4 years he didn't know a thing.
Did you ever have a moment with him where you thought maybe he was unfit to run for president? No.
I thought he was a good president. The only concern I thought he had to deal with was, could anybody do that job until they were 86? And we'd had several long talks. I had never seen him and walked away thinking he can't do this anymore. He was always on top of his brief.
You never saw any cognitive decline?
So
great.
I didn't know anything about any of this, and I haven't read the book. I saw President Biden not very long ago, and I thought he was in good shape.
We knew Bubba was in great shape when he was president. He never wandered into a closet alone. Clinton's still keeping up with the hoax. Chuck Todd says, no, not so fast.
There's almost an eagerness to blame the press without looking at who should be blamed here, and it's the leadership and, frankly, the members of the Biden administration and the leadership of the Democratic Party, who they're the ones that lied. Look, at the end of the day, no journalist is as good as their sources. At the end of the day, the Democratic Party lied to the American people. The leadership of the party lied to the American people. And that's where this scandal should be centered.
Todd says he needed sources to know Biden was cooked. No. He needed a TV. This is like the emperor with no clothes. Democrats all just pretended they didn't notice. The whole country knew Joe was exposed, and the Democrat Party's paying a price.
Which party is better described as the party with strong leaders? Look at this.
Wow.
16% of Americans say Democrats, 40% say that of the Republican Party. Now, overall, no party's doing great. Lots of Americans say neither of these qualities apply to either party, but look at how much worse off the Democrats are. A party that gets things done. Only 19% of Americans say that about the Democrats. So among Democrats and Democratic leaners, 32% say Democrats are the party with strong leaders. I mean, of their own kind.
Joe was weak, and the only action the party took in 4 years was whacking him. Besides that, they got nothing done. Clinton's in denial, Barack's in hiding, and Nancy's got a broken hip. The only one still out there is Chuck, but he can't even get his talking points straight.
Not made it clear that we're in Zelensky's corner. I hope on Ukraine the president's not the taco president. Trump always loses the fight. Trump always cops out, is what TACO stands for.
This is the Democrat problem. The Democrat think that Trump is their problem. No. Focus on the American people. Stop focusing on Trump every time. Trump this, Trump that, Trump this, Trump that. No. Focus on what the American people want. Find the need and look, Americans have so much need. All you have to do is start finding solutions to those needs. Stop worrying about your competition. Trump. No. That's what Steve Jobs, may he so rest in peace, Steve Jobs said, why are you worried about competition? I just focus on my customers. Focus on the American people and stop focusing on Trump.
Schumer can't even get through a book tour without getting heckled.
The Jewish deli has a rock thrown through it because it's...
Chuck Schumer! You can't talk about a fake anti-Semitism crisis than the real Holocaust to the Palestinian people. Come on. There's a real Holocaust happening in Gaza.
You have blood in your hands. You're a liar, a filthy liar. Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! You have blood on your hands. Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Democrats are yelling the same slogans as terrorists. That's got to drive Chuck nuts. The senator doesn't even fight back. He just sits there with his legs crossed. His term's up in 26. It's time for him to go. And everyone knows it.
I don't think that they can continue with the current elites that are in power. I don't think with Pelosi.
They got to go.
They've lost the people.
I just told Chris this. These are culture wars.
Yeah, and the Democrats just don't know how to play culture. And you want to know why they don't know? Because they're not in the culture. They're in Ivy League institutions. They're on the Upper East Side of New York. They're handing out at fancy dinners. They're patting themselves on the back on golf courses. They are
Exactly. So when you keep saying Trump is a billionaire, his father gave him billions of dollars, you are living in the best homes in the United States. You have securities, you have the best cars, you've been in government for years, decades, and then you're saying Trump is the bad person, you're pointing fingers at Trump. No, you've been living luxurious lives for years as well. So stop acting like you're some saint. No. And you Democrat leaders, they're the same ones calling hardworking Americans the uneducated ones. Crazy.
not in with the regular people. Now, you could say the same thing about Trump. You could say on paper the exact same thing about Trump and the Republicans, but then why do they keep doing this? Because they are in culture.
Democrats are scrambling to find a new face, and the only thing they can agree on is no more Kamala. Some don't even want her to run for California governor. Tim Walz was out campaigning in South Carolina this weekend, where he quoted MLK Jr., ate fried fish with hot sauce, and thanked blacks. And then Tampon said Democrats need to be bigger bullies.
I'm getting called out on this because I called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator. It's because he is. It's because he is. Oh. The governor's being mean, and the governor's speaking out on that. Well, maybe it's time for us to be a little meaner. The thing that bothers a teacher more than anything is to watch a bully, to watch this bully, and to stop it. And when it's a child, you talk to them, and you tell them why bullying.
So what is the solution, Tampon? Like, what is the solution? You keep saying he's a bully, he's this, he's that, is... Okay, what is your proposal for American people?
It's wrong. But when it's adult like Donald Trump, you bully the out of him back. You push back.
After arresting him, calling him a Nazi, and shooting him, I'm worried about what being a bigger bully looks like. Instead of fighting Trump, Tampon should fight for you. Democrats don't even want kids in schools to take tests because it's not equitable, but they want to make Trump take one.
If we want to talk about something, we need to talk about whether or not he really has the cognitive ability, because he is the current sitting president, and whether or not the 25th Amendment should apply is something that maybe we should be digging into.
Eric Swalwell's trying to win back the culture with F-bombs and tacos.
Hey, Congressman.
Trying to help you?
What the is up with Trump always chickening out on tariffs?
Tacos are an inside joke that doesn't work because you have to explain it. Plus, like Greg said, everyone loves tacos. NBC wants Democrats to start looking to win men over at the gym. First, they said gym bros were white supremacists, and now they want their vote. If Democrats want to win men, they should be men. Don't just hand out flyers outside of Equinox. Go inside and lift. The Raging Cajun says if Democrats want to win, it's the English, stupid.
I'm a speak English man. Okay, no one uses the word oligarch in the checkout counter at Walmart, okay? Just use the language that the people use and then relate to them. The most important thing is we now know we have a problem. And I don't think we can go solve the problem or address the problem by acting like we bros in some pool hall, sitting around the street, playing numbers or something. We could address it by talking about the struggles that young people and young men go through.
No, but you guys are not talking about that. You're only talking about Trump. He is the president of the United States. He's working as fast as he can to bring back sense into the United States, taking men out of women's sport, trying to end wars, bringing back jobs into the United States, bringing back manufacturing into the United States. Of course, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. But are the Democrats going to use this next 4 years to do this? To talk about Trump, rather than telling the American people what they're actually going to do for them. This is just going to help Republicans even better. All right, what's going on with the housing market?
So housing markets in the Southeast and the West are seeing more inventory and softer demand, leading to price reductions, whereas people in the Northeast continue to tell me that they don't have enough inventory on the market, and they're driven by higher income growth and limited supply.
For the first time in more than a decade, the number of U.S. home sellers now dramatically exceeds the number of buyers. That's according to a new report from Redfin. The shift in buying power could cause prices to fall. For more on the latest trends in the housing market, let's bring in real estate agent Kirsten Jordan. Kirsten, thanks for joining us this afternoon. You talk about where we were in the middle of the pandemic. It was a story about low inventory, low rates when it came to mortgages. We're in a lot different place now, aren't we?
It is so different right now, and it took us a minute to really adjust to these rates going up. And exactly what they're saying about the difference between what we're seeing in the South versus what we're seeing in the Northeast is that a lot of the insurance rates and in general what we call unsustainable price increases that were going on in the South, we're seeing those come down. And I think that's going to keep happening for a little while.
Yeah, you had a huge swing of people who were clearing out of larger, colder cities, moving to the Sun Belt. Has that slowed down a bit now that you're seeing some of these prices fall? Is that an indication that that move has really occurred?
We're seeing a really big change in this back to work movement, which I know we've been talking about now for years. If you think about it, though, when you're going back to work, or if you're in the early parts of your career, the 30s, the 40s, potentially you need to be in person to further your career and get where you want to be. And a lot of those places are in the Northeast. And then obviously there's the elephant in the room, which is the cost of insurance. And as we're seeing in Florida, especially for those affordable homes, those $300,000 to $600,000 under $1 million homes, the actual percentage of the home value and that they're dedicating to insurance costs is unsustainable for so many people, especially those people that are on fixed income.
The number of transactions that have been canceled, that's also up too. Why do you think that is?
This is so interesting that we're seeing that, especially the highest place that we saw it was actually in Atlanta, Georgia, which has been a traditionally, right, for the last 5 years, a big investor area, but we're also seeing it down in places like Miami, Florida. I really believe that this is coming from these insurance costs, and it is really coming from also seeing uncertainty. This report was from April, so we kind of have to close our eyes and go back and try to remember what was going on also geopolitically and what we were seeing, especially with the stock market, which doesn't directly affect the housing market, but it can make people extra skittish when things are going up and down. So there's a lot of different factors that we're seeing that are affecting these cancellations.
And you really are seeing two different markets here. There are those you mentioned under $1 million, the more affordable price range, and then the higher end, certainly where you are in New York City. What are the differences between these two markets, and how have they changed over the last few years?
The lower end of the market is where those costs and the cost of money, especially with the higher rates, is really hurting buyers. This is not a story of supply and demand as much as it's a story of high demand and low affordability, even though supply continues to rise. These buyers were really hoping to see that they were going to get a break when there was more inventory and prices started to come down. But when they really crunched the numbers, especially with the new cost of insurance, any cost of renovation, it's just really difficult for so many of them to get into the market. And then what we're seeing on the high end is that a lot of very, very wealthy have said, hey, everything's fluctuating big time. If I'm going to put my money someplace that's stable, I might as well put it in a market where I know that there's going to be sustainable demand in the long term. And that's why we're still seeing some of these very large trades in places like New York City. And I do still believe that we're seeing those at the very, very high end there in Palm Beach and Miami. It's just obviously some of those numbers we're not going to see necessarily as high as they were before, but in some cases we are.
A couple of years ago, mortgage rates shot up. They've stayed at that level essentially since then. Where do you think mortgage rates need to be before you start to see a bigger, it begin to spur more housing purchases, really juice the market?
The place where we need to be is probably something with a 5 handle. I think everybody's hoping that once we get into the 5s, we're going to see a tremendous push in demand or ability to purchase, because again, the demand is there. It's just the ability to actually buy something that's affordable. The reality right now, though, is as a real estate agent, I do encourage my buyers to get out there and understand the market right now. With these canceled contracts, the best moment to get in there and get a deal with a seller is right after they've lost another deal. So if you want to get in there right now, there's a really good chance that if you buy with the expectation that mortgage rates will probably remain pretty stable, you might be able to find some opportunity, and this could be that moment.
And real quickly, do you think there's enough new construction coming online?
There's definitely not enough new construction coming online. And for developers, they are getting annihilated. Remember, a lot of their borrowing rates are higher than what we see for these traditional mortgages for homeowners, for primary homeowners. So it's going to be really tough to find that new inventory. And in any place where there is new inventory that is ready to buy, that you can get at a discount, it's a time to jump on it, which is something we're seeing here in New York City.
Kirsten Jordan, thanks.
Whoa. Any investors in the chat? Anybody looking to buy a home or investment property, or even a first-time home buyers? Are you guys in the chat? Are you guys in the chat? Let me know. What are you guys thinking about with this new housing market? All right, the GOAT.
Before we get to our great guests, I consider what I'm about to say the most important opening statement that I've ever given on Fox or probably anywhere else. And I've been doing this a long time. And there's no question there will be a cabal out there for which what I say will be viewed as terrible. And I will come under withering attack. There's nothing new about that. But I've always felt that whether it's here or on radio or elsewhere, that my relationship is with you. Not the think tanks, not the Washington insiders, not the reprobates and others who have access to a keyboard and a computer. This is very important, what's taking place now. This is a headline in the New York Times. Iran has ramped up uranium enrichment while continuing nuclear talks. Tehran now has the capacity to produce bomb-grade fuel for roughly 10 weapons, according to a confidential UN report. So for all intents and purposes, Iran now has a nuclear weapon. We've been negotiating for, 5 weeks? We had the Obama deal. We had the Biden deal. We gave them $100 billion under the last administration, which, of course, they used to build up their nuclear program. We've been warned about this. We've been warned about it from the Prime Minister of Israel. We've been warned about it from me over and over again. And now we're here. We're at the precipice. And the article goes on. Iran has roughly doubled its stockpile of nuclear bomb-grade uranium over the past 3 months, even while negotiating with the Trump administration over a deal to limit its nuclear program. According to a confidential report about the United Nations Nuclear Inspection Agency, has begun circulating to capitals around the world. Now, the UN isn't exactly pro-American or pro-Israel, but they are very, very concerned about what they're seeing, and they should be. The increase gives Tehran the capacity to produce bomb-grade fuel for roughly 10 weapons, up from around 5 or 6 when President Trump was inaugurated in January. But the surge also puts new pressure on Washington in its negotiations, in which it is demanding that Iran cease all production of nuclear material. Now, the Director General of the IAEA, that is the unit within the UN, is responsible for this. His name is Rafael Grossi. Now, Grassi wrote that the significantly increased production and accumulation of highly enriched uranium by Iran, the only non-nuclear weapon state to produce such nuclear material, is of serious concern. You don't need this material for domestic energy consumption. Then we have this from Fox News. Explosive new intelligence report reveals Iran's nuclear weapons program is still active. A new intelligence report claims Iran is continuing with its active nuclear weapons program, which it says can be used to launch missiles over long distance. The startling intelligence gathering of Austrian officials contradicts the assessment of the U.S. Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard told a Senate Intelligence Committee in March that the American intelligence community, quote, continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003. Well, apparently she's dead wrong. Austria's version of the FBI, the Directorate State Protection and Intelligence Service, wrote Monday in an intelligence report, quote, in order to assert and enforce its regional political power ambitions, the Islamic Republic of Iran is striving for comprehensive rearmament with nuclear weapons to make the regime immune to attack and to expand and consolidate its dominance in the Middle East and beyond. The Austrian Domestic Intelligence Agency reported the Iranian nuclear weapons development program is well advanced, and Iran possesses a growing arsenal of ballistic missiles capable of delivering nuclear warheads over long distances, like to the United States. According to an intelligence document obtained and reviewed by Fox News Digital, Iran has developed sophisticated sanctions evasion networks, which has benefited Russia. The Times of Israel, Vienna, Iran carried out secret nuclear activities with material not declared to the UN nuclear watchdog at 3 locations that have long been under investigation, the watchdog said in a wide-ranging confidential report to member states seen by Reuters. The findings in the Comprehensive International Atomic Energy Agency report requested by the agency's 35-nation Board of Governors in November paved the way for a push by the United States, Britain, France, and Germany for the board to declare Iran in violation of non-proliferation obligations. I don't really think Iran cares if we make declarations, do you? Tehran, which openly seeks Israel's destruction, claims it wants to master nuclear technology for peaceful purposes and has long denied accusations by Western powers that it is seeking to develop nuclear weapons. But it has been enriching increasing quantities of uranium to levels that can only be used for nuclear weaponry. Oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to see. I don't want to see. This seems to be the attitude of many. And we have a movement in this country akin to the America First movement in the late 1930s, 1940, that was led by Charles Lindbergh. Japan and Tojo were on the move, as Mussolini in Italy was on the move, as the Third Reich was rising up. They kept telling the Americans, look, there's nothing we can do about this. It's far away. It's really none of our business. To the extent we can be involved in diplomacy, that's okay. But we don't want all these bombs falling, and we certainly don't want to get involved. And this is the aftermath of World War II, where most of the nations said, we don't want to get involved in any more of these wars. In fact, in 1928, last time I checked before the 1930s and 40s, many in the world got together and they passed what's called the Kellogg-Briand Pact of 1928. Boy, what a great treaty this was. And of course, we were involved in this too, whereas a treaty providing for the renunciation of war as an instrument of national policy was concluded and signed at Paris on the 27th day of August, 1928. And what did this treaty say? It said, deeply sensible of their solemn duty to promote the welfare of mankind, persuaded that the time has come when a frank renunciation of war as an instrument of national policy should be made to the end, that the peaceful and friendly relations now existing between their peoples may be perpetuated. Convinced that all changes in the relations with one another should be sought only by pacifistic means and be the result of a peaceful and orderly process, and that any signatory power which shall hereafter seek to promote to its national interest by resort to war, it should be denied the benefits furnished by this treaty. Hopeful that, encouraged by this example, All other nations of the world will join in this humane endeavor, and by adhering to the present treaty as soon as it comes into force, bring their policies within the scope, blah, 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 blah. 1928. Then Congress passed and the president signed in 1935, 1936, 1937, 1939 neutrality acts. We're neutral. We're not going to be dragged into foreign wars. Dragged into foreign wars by these Europeans or anybody else. We already had World War I. That's enough. We're not going to be dragged into these foreign wars. And so we have this organization, the America First Committee, that came to be. And the America First Committee was organized in September 1940, as USHistory.com points out, to oppose America's potential intervention in World War II. Hitler's invasion of Poland had precipitated war in September 1939. A year later, the only major military force resisting the Nazis was Britain. The smaller nations had been quickly overrun. France had capitulated. Soviet Union was using its non-aggression pact with Germany to pursue its own interests in Finland and elsewhere. And at the time, a majority of Americans felt that while the world would be a better place if Britain prevailed over Germany, they were not inclined to declare war and repeat the earlier experience of American soldiers fighting on European soil. The reluctance had inspired Congress to pass neutrality acts in the late 1930s, which restricted the American government's ability to support either party in the conflict, which in practice meant the Allies, since the Axis powers were widely regarded with distaste. Roosevelt, who'd been corresponding with Churchill for years before Churchill was even part of the Tory government, clearly identified American interests with the hope for British victory. Using tactics like the basis for a destroyers deal, he attempted to maximize his support for the British while skirting, if not actually violating, the principle of neutrality. The America First Committee group opposed him at every step. Its membership, which grew to around 800,000 by 1941, was national in character, while especially strong in the Midwest. Its best-known leader was Charles Lindbergh, who was accompanied by an amazing array that included critics of Roosevelt from the right, Colonel McCormick of the Chicago Tribune, and the left, the socialist Norman Thomas.
Shout out to the GOAT. The GOAT says, Luke says, Dams keep complaining about the legend they created. Absolutely. Liberal media, free press coverage of Trump made him 10x more popular. And it's true. You know, the American people are not stupid. You raided his home. You almost put him in jail. For what? For what? Now you're going to have to deal with him for the next forever at this point, because even if he's going to be here for the next 4 years, anybody coming into the White House from the Republican Party is just going to follow his footstep. That's it.
Sounds similar today. You have the Bernie Sanders, the AOCs, those kinds of nut jobs, George Soros. And then on the other side, you have the Charles Kochs, all coming together really in this bizarre kind of mentality that they claim is America first, which winds up being America last. Along with stolid isolationists, Senators Burton Wheeler of Kansas and William Borah of Idaho, and the anti-Semitic Father Edward Coughlin. Oh, that sounds familiar. Israel and the Jews, you see, are going to drag us into war with Iran. Israel and the Jews are going to drag us into war with Japan and Germany and Italy. Same thing. When Lend-Lease was proposed by Roosevelt in the winter of 1941, the America First Committee was strongly opposed. Lindbergh gave speeches across the country emphasizing that support for Britain was sentimental and misguided. His main points were the geography. It was impossible to imagine Britain defeating Germany from its island air bases, or for an invasion of the European continent with the 1 million men that would be required for victory. He argued that while fighting a war in Europe would be a disaster for the United States, geographically greatly favored a defensive position that would allow it to hold the entire Western Hemisphere against any aggressor. Hear echoes today? Of course you do. Of course you do. The America First Committee and its supporters lost the debate on Lend-Lease, which Congress passed, giving Roosevelt broad powers to provide material support to the Allies. Now, when the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union in June 1941, communist support for the America First group evaporated. By the fall, with war coming ever closer, the group's influence was dwindling. The end came quickly. 4 days after the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the group dissolved itself. In its final statement, the committee declared that while its policies might have prevented war, that war was now a reality, and it had become the duty of America to work for the united goal of victory. And so what happened? The world lost tens of millions of people. We lost an enormous number of people. We had the draft that sent men all over the world to fight the Axis powers in probably the most horrific war since the Civil War, or since World War II. And so here we have the AFC stance demonstrated the limits and perils of so-called realism. You hear that word used today. We're realists. It's a realism, man. We got to get rid of the old system. We have a brand new system. The founders were wrong. Everybody before today was wrong. NATO's wrong. Everything's wrong, but we're right. Realism. Foreign policy. Lindbergh's analysis of the military situation in 1940 was largely correct, but had his ideas prevailed, Britain might not have survived long enough to benefit from Hitler's rash, ultimately disastrous decision to invade Russia. Now this group, this America's First group of the 1940s, late 30s, the America First organization, as AP U.S. history points out, was founded in 1940, became one of the largest anti-interventionist movements in the U.S. during the lead-up to World War II. Critics of America First accused it of harboring anti-Semitic and pro-fascist sentiments, especially due to some members' controversial statements and affiliations. Gee, doesn't that sound familiar today? In fact, doesn't this whole damn thing sound familiar? Now, as of right now, while you're watching this, Sunday evening, Sunday night in some parts of the country, the Iranians now have not the capacity for the nuclear weapon, but in effect, a nuclear weapon. Now, what are we going to do about it? And so there's been a movement in the isolationist movement. There's been a movement in the America Last movement, which is, it's manageable. We can manage this. It's not manageable. My first guest is going to be Zuhdi Jasser. In the West, we don't seem to understand the mindset of the Islamist terrorist Nazis. I don't know why. It's available. They publish it. They say it day in and day out. They've written books about it. I don't know why the media in America doesn't dig into those books and explain what we're up against. But I have, and I've explained it. It's a totally different ideology. Now, I said here about a month ago, even with communists and fascists, mutual assured destruction means something. But with Islamist Nazi terrorists, it means nothing. Nothing. They're willing to kill themselves for a greater cause. And in fact, as long as the West exists, whether it's the Jews in Israel, or the Christians in the Middle East, or the entire West, Christian majority, America or Europe, as long as we exist, and that includes Muslims who don't buy in to the terrorist ideology, as long as they exist, well, then they can never go to heaven. They can never achieve what God wants them to achieve. And so they're not going to stop. They're not going to allow a piece of paper to stop them. And they are suicidal. It is a death cult. Mutual assured destruction doesn't work. This would be the first regime, a terrorist, Islamist, fundamentalist regime with a nuclear weapon. Now, is this what we want to see on our watch?
I don't think so.
Meaning our generation? Do we really care what the reprobates and the little cabal say from the Quincy Institute, founded by Soros and Koch and other extremists? Do we really care what they have to say? Or are we going to use our own brains? Look at history. History, we don't even have to go past 9/11 and see what took place. Listen to what they say. Read what they say. We want to avoid war. We want to avoid casualties. We want to avoid dropping bombs, but they don't. They don't. Neither do their communist Chinese supporters, who are building up a military to destroy us. Neither does the inbred in North Korea, whose father signed agreement after agreement after agreement, just like the Islamic Nazis in Tehran have, saying they swear off nuclear weapons. We just need energy here. That's all. We gave them money too, just like we gave the Iranians. We signed documents with them too, so forth and so. What the hell is it going to take to realize what we're up against here?
Oh, man.
This country should be united in its own defense. Nobody's dragging us into anything. It's not the Jews. It's not Israel again. No. Long-range, intercontinental, ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads are for you and me and your children and your grandchildren. That's what it is. And if they get them, they will use them in due course, if not sooner. They will change the entire Middle East. And you'll say, who cares? Yeah, who cares? Who cares about that? Who cares about Europe? Who cares about anything, right? Wrong. One day we'll turn around and we don't have any allies. And the enemy will be lined up. You know, they're in our hemisphere. They're in Central and South America. Oh, yes, they are. They're in the Arctic Circle, which is why the president talks about Greenland. They have a West Africa base to the communist Chinese now. They have a base in the Solomon Islands now. What do you think they're doing? You think they're going fishing?
Nope.
The good news is Donald Trump is not one of these people. He's not an isolationist. He's bombed Yemen. He's taken out Soleimani and Baghdadi. He does what he needs to do. But this is a force that continues to try and pressure him, pressure congressional Republicans, pressure people like me to keep our mouths shut. Never. Never.
Never, ladies and gentlemen. What I got from everything he said, first of all, is we are supposed to be united. Okay? I mean, if everybody's against the United States, and it's always so surprising to me that the world is against the United States. The United States is basically, like literally, the country trying to stop craziness from happening in this world. You think if China was the giant of the world, or Russia, do you think people would have the freedom to say what they want to say, or just live the way they want to live? It's absolutely impossible. But the world, they don't know it. You know, like you could be fighting for someone, they don't even know that you're fighting for their own good. They don't know. And Iran can have nuclear weapon, by the way.
Democrats took to the Sunday shows trying to dismiss any concern the Biden White House was covering up his cognitive decline. Would the Democratic Party have been stronger had President Biden dropped out of the race sooner or not run at all?
Kristen, here's what we absolutely know about last year's election.
Nobody
it's
cares,
over. And I'm going to spend all of my energy focused on the task in front of us.
I had never seen him and walked away thinking he can't do this anymore. He was always on top of his brief.
You never saw any cognitive decline.
So I didn't know anything about any of this.
Fox News contributor Joe Concha joins us now. Joe, I'm pretty sure the Democrats don't want to keep this in the news, but when it is ultimately brought up, I can't help but think that keeping his mental state in the news this way with, I don't know, a president from the last century, the last millennium, is really in Democrats' best interest of looking ahead to the future, which everybody, even in their party, has said they need to do in order to get out of this morass that they're in.
Oh, boy. I mean, you're so right, Todd. Every time any Democrat, especially in this case, a former president from the 90s, has to go on national television to deny that they knew anything about Joe Biden's brain turning to applesauce while he was president, that's another bad news cycle for the party, with many bad news cycles that have been happening over the last few weeks. I mean, this is a story that is not going away anytime today, tomorrow, next month, even next year. This was an attempted cover-up, a bad one at that, and apparently it included reportedly the chief of staff of the First Lady and Jill Biden running the country, controlling that infamous auto pen. So when Democrats say, yeah, trust us, we're the party that can save democracy, they literally engaged in the most anti-democracy behavior we have ever seen as a country. And with unelected officials no one's almost ever heard of making major decisions that impact the lives of every American, this will not be forgotten anytime soon. We need hearings. We need answers. And most importantly, I just don't want to hear a lot of noise during these hearings. We need true accountability as to what happened here, because our national security was put incredibly at stake. And Democrats like Raphael Warnock are like, oh, no, I just want to move on. That was in the past. No, you don't get to do that.
Yeah.
We need answers now.
Yeah, it feels like everybody's in self-preservation mode. Like when I met him, he was fine. He must have been having a good day. I didn't know. But of course, self-preservation doesn't help the party as a whole. And you mentioned the former First Lady, Jill Biden. Here's an excerpt from Original Sin. Dr. B, as they refer to her as, was a strong protective force in the White House. She was also, without question, one of the chief supporters of the president's decision to run for re-election and one of the chief deniers of his deterioration. So how do you feel about that excerpt that many of us knew without knowing?
Right. Chief denier. No, chief liar, actually. And Dr. B, I'm sorry, get a little personal here. My wife's an actual emergency room doctor. That's not a doctor. All right. That's somebody that puts doctor in front of their name to sound like they're more important than they actually are. Sorry, just had to go there real quick. But yeah, overall, Jill Biden is the one who knew and knows Joe Biden the most, as far as being around him during all those times, 99% of the time, when he wasn't in front of a teleprompter, when he wasn't programmed. She knew exactly what was going on, going all the way back, guys, to 2019. Again, watch the primary debates for that nomination in 2019. Joe Biden is not there, especially when you compare him to when he was vice president, and especially when comparing him to 2012 when he debated Paul Ryan in the vice presidential debate. While he was obnoxious and kept interrupting him, he was sharp. That man did not exist even 6 years ago.
I believe I saw one of the national publications refer to her as Lady Macbeth over the weekend, and I think that is very, very apt in our current times. I want to get your thoughts on this. Elon Musk shedding light on his view of the government, revealing he doesn't agree with everything the Trump administration is doing. Listen.
My frank opinion of the government is that, like, the government is just like the DMV that got big. Okay, so like when you say like let's have the government do something, you should think, do you want the DMV to do it? I mean, I agree with much of what the administration does, but we have differences of opinion.
Yo, Musk. This man's speaking fire, yo.
Speak out against the administration, but I also don't want to take responsibility for everything the administration is doing.
I mean, to that last point, isn't that healthy? Shouldn't we have people disagreeing and learning from one another as opposed to everybody in lockstep all the time?
Todd Carley, that's exactly the word I was thinking of. I think it's healthy that Elon Musk is being authentic here and not just, walking the party line. He agrees with all and everything the administration does that he temporarily worked for, and just left. What Elon Musk uncovered in quarterbacking Doge is unprecedented. It's astonishing. And what he's saying is that he wants to make sure that all that discretionary spending in the form of waste, fraud, and corruption is addressed in another bill, that it actually passes and enacted. So, yeah, it's healthy to disagree. And he's right about the government being the DMV, by the way, that the systems are antiquated. They need to be modernized. And efficiency is something you don't associate with the government in general. So good for him for speaking out. I think it's respectful. It's not personal. And there's no wedge between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. So there's two very important men with different opinions on a few things, but for the most part, they agree on the job that needs to be done.
Yeah, and maybe when we occupy Mars, the DMV and the federal government could operate more efficiently. We could potentially have another bite at the apple, according to Elon Musk's T-shirt. Joe,
Occupy Mars. I'm glad it's back to focusing on his businesses, Tesla, SpaceX, all of the great things he's doing for humanity and just innovation. All right.
Ukraine landing a massive blow against Russia as officials are expected to meet for ceasefire talks in Turkey today. Ukrainian drones targeting 5 Russian airfields at least, striking at least 40-plus military aircraft, blowing them up in an assault that took more than a year to orchestrate. And by the way, we have reports at least 2 bridges are blown up. Joining us now from Kyiv is former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, John Herbst, and the ambassador spent the last few nights in a bomb shelter. But can you...
Remember, the 45th president and now the 47th president of the United States, Donald Trump, said on a Truth Social post, he said he's the only person standing between Russia and very bad things happening to Russia. Remember he said that? And everybody was like, whoa, yo. It's true. Russia is not God. Vladimir Putin is not God. Okay? I know a lot of people are thinking that Russia is untouchable. Man, nobody messes with Russia. You know, China is behind Russia. North Korea is supporting Russia. I said it yesterday. Even if the devil himself was supporting Russia, they are no match for God, okay? No man can play God. And that's what Vladimir Putin is doing right now. And if you play God, you know what happens to every single man in history who has played God.
Put in perspective how devastating and how brilliant this attack was, called Operation Spiderweb.
This is a truly extraordinary operation, demonstrating, one, how vulnerable Russia is to measures against Russian aggression in Russia itself, and how adept the Ukrainians are at understanding and exploiting those vulnerabilities. This operation is on par for, you might say, brilliance with the Israeli operation against Hezbollah last year. Truly extraordinary.
So the Ukrainian used small FPV drones hidden inside wooden cabins mounted on trucks. When the trucks reached the targets, the roofs opened up by remote control and the drones launched. These are the bombers they're using to blow up these cities in Kyiv, ruthlessly killing civilians. And now they're blown up. This is amazing.
It's amazing. It will reduce Ukrainian civilian casualties. We know that many planes were hit. We don't know the extent of the damage. But A, some planes are now out of action. B, the Russians will have to move the planes they have farther away from the front, which means the planes they have will not be used as frequently. And this is also a great strategic benefit for the United States, because those planes that were destroyed, Tu-22s, Tu-95s, are in fact nuclear-capable planes. They are used for Russian nuclear weapons, which are, first and foremost, targeting the United States or use against the United States. So we are safer from Russian nuclear strikes as a result of Ukraine's action.
I hope people realize that our money's being put to great use, and the fight we're doing against Russia helps America and helps the West. This cost $70,000. It did at least $7 billion worth of damage. They are more innovative, more resourceful, more motivated than the Russians, who throw nothing but bodies, and some of which are even North Korean bodies, at this attack. So what does this do to talks today?
Well, first, this undermines the false common wisdom that Russia would inevitably win this war. If the West continues to arm Ukraine,
yes,
and that means first and foremost the United States. It doesn't have to be a gift from the United States. It could be paid for by Europeans. It could be a loan. Russia will not win this war. And it's very much in American interest that Russia not win this war, because Russia's designs are against American interests. That's why the recent report put out by the Director for National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, identified Russia as a major adversary of the United States. So we need to provide the weapons to Ukraine. But also, the peace negotiations have gone nowhere because Putin believes that the United States will ultimately leave Ukraine in the lurch. He's counting on that. And that's why he's stalling. That's why he's preventing President Trump from achieving the durable peace via ceasefire that President Trump desperately wants. So Ukraine's blow yesterday is a blow in favor of Russia eventually accepting a ceasefire.
And Ambassador, don't diminish what's coming out of the Senate. Those are massive sanctions coming out of the Senate. It's got about at least 80 senators. It's veto-proof. And I think that Senator Lindsey Graham's going to be announcing something this week. And what you got to tell them is, $300 billion of frozen funds, you don't come to a deal in the next month. That's going to go right to Ukraine. And that's what you tell them. There is a timeline on patience. And Donald Trump took tremendous risks to give him an off-ramp, and he's refusing to take it, and he's going to pay the price for that. Ambassador, thanks so much for your courage being in the war zone, and thanks for your insight today.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
Right now for another round of peace talks. This one's in Turkey again, after Ukraine launched its largest strikes on Russia since the war began over the weekend.
Peter Doocy is live at the White House with more. Peter.
Good morning. President Trump told me on Friday he thinks both Putin and Zelensky are stubborn. And then we were told yesterday that President Trump was actually given no heads up during the year and a half of planning by Ukraine for these complex drone strikes against Russian long-range bombers at various airfields, where kamikaze one-way drones were smuggled into Russia on trucks hidden in the ceilings of mobile wooden cabins. They were doing all of that. They never told the United States. That means that this week, President Trump's foreign policy focus is going to be on trade instead, specifically with China.
President Trump, we expect, is going to have a wonderful conversation about the trade negotiations this week with President Xi. I'm not sure if it's been scheduled at a specific date, but it has been discussed that the two of them will talk about the Geneva Agreement, which we are all very favorably inclined towards thinking this is a huge step forward.
The Chinese Commerce Ministry says the U.S. government has unilaterally and repeatedly provoked new economic and trade frictions, exacerbating uncertainty and instability in bilateral economic and trade relations. And this chat is going to be important because President Trump still thinks that Chinese trade is being conducted unfairly.
They violated a big part of the agreement we made. You know, if you read that whole statement, I was very nice to them. I helped them because they were in trouble with the stoppage of a massive amount of business.
The president has been uncharacteristically quiet yesterday and today. Still nothing on his schedule except a private lunch with VP Vance. Back to you.
Wow, well, I'm sure he's going to find a way to talk about so much going on over the weekend. Peter, thanks so much.
Hey, Peter, can I ask you a question really quickly? How common is it for countries to share what their plans might be with America if we are allies?
During the Ukraine war, it's been pretty common because for a long time the United States was sharing the United States still shares intelligence with the Ukrainians to help them do different things. And the United States, of course, has given billions of dollars of aid to the Ukrainians. And so it is unusual for them to just kind of keep the United States in the dark about something like this. And it would seem like this is something that President Trump is not going to be happy about because he wants to know what's going on as he tries to broker peace there.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm telling you, man, this so-called powerful, great Russia, it would be so weak of them to be, I don't want to use the word annihilated by Ukraine, but this is what pride causes. Now it's getting close to Moscow. It's getting close to Moscow. I'm telling y'all, so he better just relax and say, you know what? I throw in the towel. But pride would not let Putin throw in the towel. It's almost impossible. And I saw a comment in the comment section. The person said that a leader that said, I just want people to stop dying. I've never heard that from any leader. Maybe Nelson Mandela, of course, the great. But, I mean, from an American president, I just want people to stop dying. That's just wild.
Greg Palcott has more on all of this. He's live in London. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning, Dana. Yeah, while talks go on in an attempt to end the war in Ukraine, the war itself rages on in new and unprecedented ways. Over the weekend, Ukraine launching drones targeting 4 military bases across Russia. Over 40 long-range bombers claimed to have been hit. That would basically be a third of Moscow's bomber fleet. Unprecedented also, according to Kyiv, because many of the drones were launched from trucks driven into Russia secretly. The drones fired remotely. Those involved said to have gotten back out of the country. In addition, 2 key bridges in Russia were also knocked out, leaving trains derailed, casualties, and destruction. Moscow also active, however, with its biggest joint air attack of the war. Nearly 500 drones plus missiles fired. A Ukrainian military base, one of the targets, leaving 12 soldiers killed and 60 injured. As for those talks in Istanbul, yes, they're apparently already over. Ukraine saying Russia handed over a memo outlining their idea of a peace plan. A new release of prisoners is also said to be prepared as the dust is settling from a very complex and a very nasty weekend of war. Dana.
And right before these ceasefire talks, Greg Palcott, thank you.
So General Jack Keane is here on this, and General, nice to have you on today, especially today. From what I understand, they were driving semi-trucks in different parts of Russia. Some of this in the far eastern part of the country that would really not expect a hit in that part. And they launched drones from these trucks as they were mobile. You know, General, sometimes in these conflicts, they only subside when both sides are tired of fighting. Do you get any sense now that we've reached that point on behalf of Ukraine and Russia?
Well, certainly the Ukrainians are going to continue to fight as long as there's Russian troops on their ground. Even if the United States and Europe pulled away and eventually Russia would topple Ukraine, the Ukrainians will continue to fight. They'll fight them as long as Russian troops are there. And that's just the reality of it. Russia is not giving up the fight because they believe they can win. Even though 39 months into this thing, they haven't been able to take Ukraine. Think about that. That's how long we fought in World War II to get rid of the Nazis in Europe. Yeah. So it's really quite remarkable. But to underscore this drone strike, to say it's brilliant may be a little bit of an understatement. 5 airfields were targeted, 4 were successful. 2 of those airfields, one was in Siberia to the east, and another one was actually close to China. 3 of them were in the western part of Russia, one really quite north, close to the Arctic. All of them were targeting bombers that are used either in the strikes against civilians and also against ground troops in Ukraine, and they deliver conventional bombs or air-launched cruise missiles. Some of the ones in the east, we can't verify whether they've been used in Ukraine or not, but they certainly would be used to replace the damaged bombers that are in the west and much closer to Ukraine. The operation is brilliant because the Ukrainians contracted Russian drivers. They drove the trucks. No Ukrainians involved. They contracted Russian containers. They assembled those Russian containers inside of Russia. We can't verify that they were using actually Russian component parts to do that assembly, and there were Russian trucks involved in all of that. There were no Ukrainians involved in the operation on the ground once the trucks left the area where they were assembled. And they pulled into an off-ramp like not as full as a truck stop, but a place that we see truckers stop. And obviously that was a designated location. It was close to the airfields, and it was from there that the drones were launched remotely from those vehicles. A remarkable operation. It kind of reminds me of what the Israelis did with the Hezbollah leadership and the explosive devices that happened on it.
Jen, let me ask you this in the minute I have
really
left
quite remarkable.
Yeah. Some people point to game-changing moments in times of conflict. Do you think this is one of them?
I don't think it turns the war around, but it certainly it indicates Ukraine's resolve to defend this nation, their nation, and what Russia is doing to them, and the horror they've inflicted on this regime. That they're going to fight back with everything that they can, and at times, when they don't have all the means, they don't have all the weapons that Russia has, what they do have is brain power and innovation and creativity. And they took actually kind of low technology copter drones that you see all over the place in the United States that youngsters are playing with themselves to deliver such a vital blow to bombers that are inflicting so many casualties on the Ukrainians. Truly remarkable.
Yeah, we'll see how Putin reacts next. General, thank you so much. Great to have you on. Jack Keane.
Pride is most definitely not going to let Putin, calm down. He's going to want to do something really terrible, which that's my prediction. I don't know. But if he goes deeper, it's only going to go deeper as well for him and his people. And as a leader, your people are those people that you're leading, they're your number one priority. So if he's willing to sacrifice his people for the sake of saying he wants to take Ukraine. Okay. Good luck.
Bringing the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt for more on this and a couple of other items of pressing importance. So here's what the Deputy Director, Caroline, welcome to the program, Dan Bongino, said about this Boulder act. He called it an act of terror. He said this act of terror is being investigated as an act of ideologically motivated violence based on the early information, the evidence, and witness accounts. We'll speak clearly on these incidents when the facts warrant it. He's been charged with a hate crime. The FBI is investigating terrorism. What's the White House's perspective on this?
Well, FBI Director Kash Patel is absolutely right. And the president just put out a very strong statement condemning this attack. This terrorist came into our country under the previous administration. Joe Biden's administration foolishly gave him a tourist visa and that allowed him to unlawfully remain in our country. This individual should have been deported. Instead, he was welcomed here. And now, 3 years later, after coming to this country under Joe Biden's administration, he is lighting Jewish people on fire who were simply trying to peacefully pay respect to the hostages in Israel. This absolutely is an act of targeted terrorism. The FBI and the Department of Justice are investigating it as such, and the president is going to ensure that this individual is held to the fullest extent of the law. And not just this individual, but any individual, especially illegal criminals who engage in acts of terrorism, will be held accountable under this president.
Caroline, the details that we are now learning, as Alicia just reported out of Boulder, they are chilling. They found 14 unlit Molotov cocktails at the scene of his arrest. On his victims, he said he targeted them. He knew they were there. In fact, when he confessed to the attack, when he was being taken into custody, he told the police he would do it again. So how do we make sure there are not more people like that out there in our streets, in this country? How do we keep people safe?
Well, this is, again, an act of despicable evil. And this administration has already done so much to ensure that we are deporting individuals who seek to do harm in our country and who are in our country illegally. In fact, ICE Boston just announced the arrest of more than 1,100 illegal aliens who were in Boston in the surrounding suburbs in Massachusetts, which was a sanctuary city for a state for illegal aliens. The only place this country should be a sanctuary for are law-abiding American citizens. And that's why the president has taken historic, unprecedented action to secure our nation's territorial borders, but he has also signed an executive order to streamline and make stricter our legal immigration process and our visa process. And I would remind anyone here who is on a visa, like this individual in Boulder, Colorado, came to our country. It is a privilege, not a right, to enter the United States of America. And we are not going to allow people who are pushing anti-American values and especially engaging in acts of violence to remain in our country. Your visa will be revoked and you will be deported.
Yeah, you mentioned the fact that this person's status or lack thereof. This is what DHS said. The Colorado terrorist attack suspect, Mohammed Solomon, is illegally in our country. He entered the country in August of 2022 on a B-2 visa that expired on February of 2023. He filed for asylum in September of 2022. We've got the timeline that we want to put up on the screen after we read the statement there from Tricia McLaughlin. So he came in August 27th, 2022, September 29th, 2022. He filed a claim for asylum. February 26th, his authorization to stay expired. That was in 2023. But look at this. March 29th, 2023, a month after that, he's granted a work authorization by the Biden administration. What does that say, Caroline, about their vetting process?
They had no vetting process. This is something President Trump has been calling attention to for years. He talked about this on the campaign trail, how the Biden administration was allowing illegal aliens from all over the world to come into our country illegally, unvetted, untested. We had a wide open border policy, and the president was right to point that out in his statement this morning. All of that has come to an end, though, John, and this administration is focused on deporting as many of these illegal aliens who entered our country country as possible. Again, this is not going to be a place of asylum for those who seek to do harm in the United States of America. We have a legal immigration process.
Viewers and listeners, any new details from Boulder as we get them. Caroline, meanwhile, I want to ask you about the president and this big, beautiful bill. Rand Paul, the senator, seems to be a holdout, says the math doesn't add up, although he could support it if the debt ceiling hike is removed. Here he is in his own words on the Sunday Show over the weekend.
The math doesn't really add up. It's about $320 billion in new spending. To put that in perspective, that's more than all the DOGE cuts that we found so far. I think there are 4 of us at this point, and I would be very surprised if the bill at least is not modified in a good direction.
All right, so President Trump did take to Truth Social to respond to the senator and said if he votes against our great, big, beautiful bill, he's voting for, along with the radical left Democrats, a 68% tax increase and perhaps even more importantly, a first-time ever default on U.S. debt. So how do you win over Rand Paul, and what changes is the president willing to see to this bill?
Well, anyone who votes against the one big, beautiful bill, including Senator Rand Paul, will be voting for a tax hike of more than $4 trillion on the American people, and their voters will know about it. That is unacceptable to Republican voters and all voters across the country who elected this president in a Republican majority to get things done on Capitol Hill. And this bill is the most historic piece of legislation to ever move through Congress in modern history. Not only does it save nearly $2 trillion, but it also delivers on the president's key priorities. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime for our law enforcement officers and all those who are putting in extra hours to make ends meet for their families. It also ends taxes effectively on Social Security for our seniors who are dependent on that Social Security income. It also has historic investments in border security, historic funding for the Golden Dome and our national security, and so many other incredible things are packed into this bill. So now it is before the Senate. Those discussions are ongoing, but the president is not going to back down from those key priorities that he promised the American public, and they are expecting Capitol Hill to help him deliver. We made the bill through the House. We need to get it through the Senate, back to the president's desk here at the White House as soon as possible.
As it was making its way through the House, the president accused, without naming names, some Republicans of grandstanding. I imagine that we might hear similar language in the days ahead. Caroline.
Shout out to Levitt, the youngest press secretary, doing a wonderful job. Most importantly, she's really outspoken and saying exactly what she should be saying. All right, what is going on with Federman? Federman is most likely going to become a Republican because Democrats are pushing him out. They're trying to push him out. Federman is most likely going to lean right. I'm telling y'all. Check this out.
Pennsylvania Senator John Federman is back in the spotlight today after sitting down for a bipartisan discussion with Republican Senator Dave McCormick. Federman has faced mounting criticism over the last several weeks over his ability to serve. And now new reports detail Federman's habit of allegedly avoiding Senate duties to spend hours alone in his office. This from the Philadelphia Inquirer editorial board. They call him out saying, quote, being an elected official comes with public scrutiny. If Federman can't handle the attention or perform his job, then in the best interest of the country and the nearly 13 million residents of Pennsylvania he represents, he should step aside. It's time for Federman to serve Pennsylvanians or step away. Well, today, Shannon Bree moderated that bipartisan discussion we mentioned and asked Federman specifically about the calls for him to leave.
Well, no, for me, it's very clear. It's just part of like this weird smear, this thing. And the more kinds of left kind of media continues to have these kinds of an attack, and it's just part of a smear, and that's just not it's just not accurate. I've always been there. And for me, if I miss some of those votes, I've made 90% of them. And we all know those votes that I've missed were on Monday. Those are travel days. And I have 3 young kids, and those are throwaway procedural votes that they were never determined if they were important. That's a choice that I made. And, of course, he did defend me through that. And he actually asked me, it's like, is it okay to defend you? I don't want that to create more political problems.
Thought it might hurt him.
Yeah, he did. And I'm like, no, I appreciate that. He and people recognize the smear in this process of this.
Look, Jeremy, there is zero doubt in my mind that this is a smear campaign against John Fetterman. And I think that's evidenced by the New York Magazine article. All of the criticisms of Fetterman are laced with criticisms of his views on Israel. Here are 3 examples from New York Mag. They talk about his megalomania, evidenced by the fact that he thinks he's the most knowledgeable source on Gaza. Okay, that's the evidence. Then they say his endless fights over Israel coincided with setbacks in his recovery. Okay. And then they say Gaza lured him back on X. So it seems like all of these criticisms are laced with criticisms of his views.
That's exactly right. I mean, they're not even trying to hide the ball here. They're being very clear. The only issue they have with Senator Fetterman is the fact that he's pro-Israel. That is the number one problem they have with him. And if he were just got along on the bandwagon of all this kind of pro-Hamas type of propaganda, then they probably would leave him alone. After all, this was the party that looked the other way when we had a diminished commander-in-chief in the Oval Office for 4 years under President Biden. This is the party that looked the other way with all the octogenarians and sometimes in their 90s, people still serving on the Democrat side in the House and the Senate. So they don't care really about in terms of capacity or ability to lead. What they care about is, are you going to toe the party line? And it's amazing to me that just the hubris of the left. Certainly it can't be that maybe some people disagree with what you believe. No, if you disagree with us, then there must be something wrong with your brain. I mean, that's what they think, is that, certainly there must be something wrong with his cognitive functions, because certainly no Democrat senator could disagree with the party line.
And, in 2022, Lydia, these publications, they said it was ableist to ask questions about the health and, all the criticisms we've seen. Well, all of a sudden they take this interest in Fetterman's health starting on May 2nd. You can see in our wall here, look at all these highlights. May 2nd, New York Times, New York Magazine, Politico, they all start asking questions coinciding with John Fetterman's tiptoeing towards moderation.
And so interesting about how that has turned, right? Because after his initial health scare, there was really a rally of support, among the Democratic Party to see him recover and hold this office. But now that it's not convenient for them, they're going to use that against him. It's very clear to me that they're trying to weaponize this issue against him, not just because of his support for Israel, but I think it's his attempt to be bipartisan. The fact that he met with President Trump earlier on, very soon after Trump won the election. The fact that he's having this debate with Senator McCormick there in his home state of Pennsylvania. The fact that he's also friendly to fracking, which is a very smart position for this man to have, given that he's from the state of Pennsylvania, an energy capital of the country. So for all these reasons that he's going against the party is the very same reason that they're trying to get him out, it seems.
Without question. And I love when the New York Times says the quiet part out loud, because they often don't do that. They conceal it. His volatile and concerning behavior, which aides noted, only increased since the election. That has coincided with a period when his politics have become more conservative. So they said it, Lisa.
Right. And that's the issue. And in addition to some of the things, he was the only Democrat to support Pam Bondi, to vote for her nomination for Attorney General.
Bingo.
First Democrat to meet with President Trump post 2024. He co-sponsored the Lake and Riley Act. But I agree, his biggest sin is his support for Israel. That's why the left has turned on him. As it's been pointed out, they clearly have no problem with mental decline. They covered up Joe Biden. They thought he was going to have to be in a wheelchair, and they were okay with covering that up. Also, by the way, 8 members of Congress have died since November 2022. All Democrats, by the way. So they're completely fine with that as well. But what they're not fine with is if you don't, completely go along with the Democrat Party and March step, and you defy them and you support Israel.
Emily.
I'm going to play devil's advocate just for a second, because I thought the same way. 100%. And then I read that email, the alleged email from the prior chief of staff to the medical director that was in charge of Fetterman's care. And it gave me pause, because it wasn't meant for publication. And it detailed a very concerning and very detailed description of behavior. And, when you go through, as I'm sure so many people watching have and here on the couch, when you go through someone that is dealing with a long-term disease or illness, there's a lot that goes on. And when it affects them mentally, there's a lot that goes on. And so I had sympathy and I had empathy in that moment for what I was reading, knowing what it feels like to be really confused by someone's behavior and have alarming questions and all the things. And because of the cover-up that the Dems just participated in, I have a higher sensitivity to make sure that everything is highlighted and identified. So I'll just close by saying that I really hope that this scrutiny is applied to everyone, because I venture and posit that there are plenty of people that we are paying that don't represent their constituents whatsoever and don't show up and have horrible, vile habits that impede their ability to be acute in their decision making and the like. So I'm not trying to focus on Federman, but just to say that if there is even an iota of truth of the concerns for his health and mental acuity at this moment, then perhaps it should be dealt with off camera and out of the
But Emily, who would be left in Congress?
There's a lot of congressmen women.
A
not
big
doing their
refresh,
jobs.
like 10 people showing.
Well, I like the change in politics. And
Truth is, people don't think politicians are human beings. They just see them as, I don't know, like machines. These people have families, kids. Just when Don Bongino had an interview on Fox News and he was saying, this job is hard on his wife and his family. And guess what? Everybody was going crazy. Oh, so he's complaining now. He's a human being, okay? So he's not allowed to say the job is taking a toll on his wife. What is so bad about saying that? So I don't know if they're going to think Federman is a human being. They think he's a machine, of course. All right, here we go. Republicans
And our
need
friend
to take
Kayleigh
heed.
McEnany, co-host of Outnumbered. Great to have you
Hello.
here.
Good to be here.
I want you to listen to Congressman Jeffries. This is what he had to say about all of this.
We don't have the presidency right now, so that's always going to be challenging a few months after a presidential election. Understandably, there's real frustration amongst the American people. They should be frustrated.
But they're
Housing
frustrated
costs are
with
too
you
high.
as well,
Child
with
care costs-
Democrats as well.
Exactly.
Of course, they're frustrated with the system.
This felt a little bit like, it's not me, it's you.
yeah, look, I mean, he's right. It's hard after you lose the presidency. Your numbers go down. But where is the strategy? I'm still waiting on the autopsy of what went wrong. I mean, you just heard the Tim Walz comments about being meaner. I'm not sure that was the takeaway from the election. The takeaway was, the trans issue, language policing, the economy, and Republicans having a plan. So when is that autopsy going to come? And when are the proactive, forward-looking plans going to be manifested? No one has an agenda. They need a Newt Gingrich-like moment to reshape what their party stands for, and I haven't seen that.
It appears that anyone who goes out there is not selling the deal. They're not making the sale, we should say. CNN had a poll that just came out, compared Democrats to Republicans, and here's the view of Americans. Who's got strong leaders? 40 to 16% Republicans, right? Who's the party of change? 32-25 Republicans. Who gets things done? 36 to 19 Republicans over Democrats.
Wow.
That's 3 for 3.
And when you ask Democrats their view on those issues, of Democrats, just 32% of Democrats say Democrats are the party with the strong leader. 41% think their party's the party to get things done. So you have to win back your party and then endeavor to win back independence. But word of warning to Republicans, there was an interesting poll out, JL Partners previewed it to Politico. And what they found is there's a big challenge for Republicans leading up to the midterms of motivating the Trump voter. The Trump voter shows up for Trump. And they said particularly the young men who voted for Trump, some of the new black voters who came and voted for Trump, they're not necessarily motivated to turn out for Republicans unless you frame this as this will help Republicans win the presidency in 2028. So when you frame this as a national issue with Trump, you may have a shot, but that's a word of warning.
Yeah, that's interesting. I saw that too. Hey, Bill Clinton, he had to get out there and do an interview. CBS Sunday Morning, they asked him about Biden's cognitive decline. Said didn't see it. Watch.
Did you ever have a moment with him where you thought maybe he was unfit to run for president? No.
I thought he was a good president. I had never seen him and walked away thinking he can't do this anymore. He was always on top of his brief.
You never saw any cognitive decline?
So I didn't know anything about any of this, and I haven't read the book. I saw President Biden not very long ago, and I thought he was in good shape.
Makes you wonder how much access he had, because that would be news
I know.
to Michael
It's like
Bennett, who's
obvious
in the
to
book.
anyone, right?
Yeah, and we've heard from senators, at least their comments in the book, Michael Bennett, Mark Warner, however those comments got in there, questioning the mental acuity of the president. So it makes you wonder, how often did Bill Clinton see him?
That's a good point. He also said in that interview that he can't see how someone can do that job at the age of 86, which is where Joe Biden would have been had he won a second term. Well, if you're Bill Clinton, what are you going to say? Oh yeah, he was going downhill 2 years ago. The answer for him is to say, I didn't see it coming, and I thought he was up for the job.
Yeah, I think most people want to back away from this issue. This is why Republicans need to lean into this issue. Thus far, I don't think they've done a good enough job leaning in on the oversight committee.
No, he is in a position of power within the. If he wants to, like he's the godfather, right? He could say, "Well, this wasn't good. We took money from people, and we asked for donations from people." You know, he could have taken a different tact, and he didn't. Maybe that's because they don't want to revisit things. They want to look backwards. I can understand why. But
And he doesn't have a political future. So the people who are really going to have to answer that question, the Kamala Harris book, that will be fascinating. Every contender in 2028 will have to answer that question. Bill Clinton has the luxury of riding off into the sunset. Others might have to be a little more forthright.
That's right. We'll see when Obama does an interview.
There you go.
Let's see. All right, Kaylee, we'll
Right,
see
it's
you
going
on
to happen
November.
right here, actually.
That'd be great to watch.
If Obama came on Fox News and actually said something that made sense, that may change the trajectory for Democrats, but it's not going to do it.
Trying to help you? What the f*** is up with Trump always chickening out on tariffs?
The Democrats just can't quit the cringe. Your favorite Congressman Eric Swalwell posting a video of himself eating a taco to try to troll President Trump. Because that's the new strategy now. Be tougher, meaner, and somehow dumber. Enter Kamala's truck-fixing failed Veep. Tim Walz thinks that bullying Trump will solve all of their problems.
Maybe it's time for us to be a little meaner. Maybe it's time for us to be a little more fierce. Because we have to ferociously push back on this. And again, I'll speak to my teacher colleagues in here. The thing that bothers a teacher more than
He keeps talking about my teachers. He was a coach, now teacher. Like, nobody cares, Tampon.
anything is to watch a bully, to watch this bully and to stop it. And when it's a child, you talk to them and you tell them why bullying's wrong. But when it's adult like Donald Trump, you bully the out of him back. You push back. You make sure they know it's not there.
But be very afraid if Tim Walz enters your gym. The Democrats, get this, are now being encouraged to court young men while they're exercising and lifting weights. Check out this headline from MSNBC, quote, "Do you even vote, bro? Democrats should look for new voters at the gym." Oh, Harold, please make sense of this strategy because at first blush, it just looks like utter nonsense.
It's because it is. When I hear Governor Walz and I hear some Democrats, a lot of other Democrats talking, it's almost like fingernail scratching on chalkboard, not just the way they sound, but what they're saying also. I think everyone has to take a step back in the party. I know I've shared before, we lost the race and there's frustration that mounts on top of frustration because we're watching President Trump and there's some things that we believe we would be doing differently and there are things that irritate us, if not altogether antagonize us. But that happens every presidential race when the party who doesn't win is watching from the outside. The question is, what do you do? We have to react less to Trump and begin more, instead spell out what it is we would do differently to make life more affordable for people. Give you one tangible example. Artificial intelligence, we talked a little bit about in the last segment, the inevitability of that gripping every aspect of our economy. Not only could make it where people are losing jobs, but also could make the prices of things go up. Why aren't we thinking about ways to prepare the workforce and the economy for the inevitability of that? To ensure that we have whatever we may need, more kids studying liberal arts because they're going to be machines that can do some of the math and science, trying to promote hard work and determination, something you really can't teach, but we got to figure out ways how we make America better and better suited for what's coming. What we're doing is not working. It may make us feel good. Now, I got to tell you, the whole taco thing, I think, is kind of funny. And I think that Democrats who want to make a little hay of that should make a little hay of that. But understand, that can't be the focus and the fundamentals of any counter to President Trump. He's popular because he's doing things. And when people look at us, they don't take us credibly or seriously. We got to be taken credibly on cultural issues and then lay out an alternative agenda around making America more affordable again. That's where President Trump is falling, and that's where we should be lifting up. But all this silliness you guys are doing now, nobody's listening.
But Jesse, this common sense is nowhere to be found because they're still throwing Tim Walz up the Clyburn Fett front and center, right? He's the main stage. He's the keynote speaker. So why is that? There's no common sense anywhere in their strategy.
Well, they're fighting Trump instead of fighting for the American people. Trump is not the sun. Not everything revolves around him. If you focus on the American people instead of the president, the people will appreciate that. The thing the Democrats are saying about the gym, you can't campaign at the gym. Democrats have to go into the gym. They have to work out. Working out actually makes you more masculine.
I work out.
It increases your testosterone. Well, you need to lift harder and heavier.
How much do you bench?
It makes you more competitive. It makes you happier, healthier, all that stuff. Being around other guys is also good for you.
A good sauna, Planet Fitness.
And women are more attracted to guys that lift. And that's just scientifically proven. Now, I was at a resort a little while back, and I saw Senator Thune at the gym. The man is jacked, and the guy is in great shape, and he lifts hard. And you look at Schumer, he's built like a woman. Now, men do not want to be led by the party of women. Men want to be led by other men. So Democrats need to become men, and then they can persuade men. But they have to lift first. I'm serious. There's a quote by Maya Angelou, Dana.
Oh, thank you.
Could you ask permission from Dana before you keep going?
People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. People don't like the way they feel around Democrats. Because Democrats don't like the way they feel. And if they lifted, they feel better, and then everybody around them would feel better.
You had me at Maya, but...
What about the bullying thing? Like we just talked about how, where rhetoric gets you.
So Tim Walz is saying it's better to be meaner, not smarter. So be aware of that. And also, it's tough times for the party of Thomas Jefferson. In today's news roundup that we got this morning, the losing candidates from the Democratic ticket were given profiles in the national newspapers about their future political ambitions. And yet their political stock continues to go down. Walz himself said, I was a terrible candidate. So to me, I'm like, you just took yourself out of the race. But if you take out Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, then you go to Bernie Sanders and AOC, and then you get back to the whole thing of being meaner and growing a beard does not mean that you actually have any good policy. I learned something today that I didn't know. Way back when the Tea Party first started, Speaker Boehner told his members to go there, sit in the back, and listen. And it seems to me if the Democrats could find a way to do that, maybe it's at the gym, it would help them.
The thing is, Greg, don't you what they're doing is so performative. Like it's all social media centered. That talk about there's been no greater chasm between them and their constituents, I argue, than now when the Democrats are just chasing likes rather than chasing any kind of actual support.
That's a very good point, Emily. I just want to point out that we like tacos. That's why this doesn't work. We like tacos. Right. Swalwell should have been doing Chinese food. I don't get it. I mean, his chopstick was found in a wonton. Oh, come on, buddy. Oh, by the way, Tim Walz is a clown in search of a circus because the Dems' big top collapsed, and now he's just like a weird older guy. And when you get older, and I'm getting there, I'm still in my 40s, you should have a little bit of wisdom. People want to have what you have. There should be some age-related growth, but when you see him, he's kind of like a sloppy, impulsive baby. And then you think about, like, how did we get here? Like, Obama picked Biden, Biden picked Kamala, Kamala picked Walz. Walz, he's got nowhere to go, so he's wandering around. He's almost like Bill Nye, the science guy. You're not quite sure what he's doing. Why is he credentialed? You know, it doesn't make any sense to me. And then he's like, have you ever heard anybody say, you know, Dana, I really think you need to do some more bullying? Has anybody ever said that as a strategy? And you made the right point. It's like, you know, you're out of bullets when you resort to bullying. It's like, hey, that's our strategy. We got to bully. How could you get any meaner towards Trump than you were? I mean, you called him Hitler. You called him an existential threat. I'm sorry, what's left? As for the gym, once again, something is only good if it has political value. Before, remember when you went there was that whole trend of like going to the gym and fitness was racist or white privilege, and adherence to any kind of standards was seen as oppressive. Like, you know, what's wrong with being plus size? You know, now, hey, if you go to the gym and it can help you politically, suddenly fitness is acceptable to these wonky dopes. But They're not aware. You insert politics at the gym, they're going to drop a weight on your ass because nobody talks politics in the gym. We talk about my bench. Why is my body weight?
That's true. I'm not a guy, but if you approach me in the gym, I will pepper spray you. Whether or not talk about
For sure. Nobody talks about politics at the gym. Everybody's trying to get fit, wide chest and wide backs. That's what they're thinking about, biceps and triceps. What they're talking about. What'd you think about President Trump? No, man. Nobody cares at the gym, okay? Some people think everything is about politics. It's not, okay? People have real lives. All right? All right, men and women sport.
In today's day and age, this is a stunning act of bravery and, yes, defiance. 2 high school track stars refused to stand on the medal podium after placing in the Oregon State Championship for the high jump. Why? Because the athlete standing next to them was a biological male.
Also in 5th place for Miami Wells, Leon Rose. 4th place honors to Sherwood's Reese Ecker. In 3rd place from Tiger, Alexa Anderson.
Alexa Anderson and Reese Eckerd placed 3rd and 4th, respectively, but tied for 5th was a trans athlete, Leah Rose. The 2 teens refused to take their places on the podium and turned their backs to it, quietly protesting a system that forced them and their teammates to surrender spots to a trans. Here to tell her story is Alexa Anderson, along with Jessica Steinman, Executive General Counsel at America First Policy Institute. Alexa, look, you finished ahead of the trans athlete in this case, but there's time and again instances where trans athletes have taken awards and 1, 2, and 3 spots from female athletes. Did you take a stand for them as well?
This was my first time competing against a transgender individual, so this is the first public stand that I have taken in this issue, but I have privately supported all other girls that have done the same with positive messages, commenting on posts, and just supporting them and letting them know I'm behind them in any way.
Alexa, what do you have to say to people watching across the country about the unfairness of this? Why is it unfair?
It's unfair because biological males and biological females compete at such different levels that allowing a biological male into our competition is taking up space and opportunity from all these hardworking women. The girl in 9th who should have been in 8th and had that podium spot had that taken away from her, as well as many others.
In all of those slots, Jessica, whether you're 8th or 5th or 4th, that all works toward, your points and your national standing. And so all of those places matter. People say, oh, she didn't finish 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, so it doesn't matter. But it does matter. And I think Alexa made that point.
No, it's so important, Laura. And I want to say thank you to Alexa for really standing up for all the courageous girls out there and doing the right thing. And Laura, thank you for bringing attention to this national issue. I think one thing that we've talked about is access to the podium, access to those scholarships. And in this situation, not even just that access, but the First Amendment issue that came about when they were asked to and kind of sidelined from the competition here.
So tell us about that, Alexa. Being in any way ostracized or treated differently because you have a common sense view on this. A lot of young women are afraid to speak out or even do a silent protest.
Yeah, we stepped off the podium in protest, and as you can see in the video, an official kind of told us, hey, go over there. If you're not going to participate, get out of the photos.
So you couldn't even have your moment. That wasn't allowed. You had to stand forward, not your back to it.
Yes, they asked us to move away from the medal stand. So when they took the photos, we weren't even in it at all.
Yes, well, you don't really deserve to be there because you just worked hard and you competed, and you've done it your entire life, by the way, which is a grueling sport that takes hundreds and even thousands of hours to perfect at any level. Jessica, I know America First Legal has filed discrimination actions in these cases. Briefly explain this to us. I think you filed a Title IX case.
Yes. So America First Policy Institute, we filed a complaint with the Department of Education asking them to look into the Oregon Department of Education. Here we're asking, so a Title IX, you're right, Laura, a Title IX violation, so the men and the women's sports. But on top of this, because of this weekend's race, that the women were excused, they were sidelined, they were told to get out of there. We also would like them to look at a First Amendment issue. And Laura, this is, you know exactly this. This is why the First Amendment was created. When a citizen has an issue with their government, especially about their own rights, they should be able to speak out. And these girls were not allowed to speak out.
Well, is there a rule that they had to face a certain way? I bet not. They'll probably write one if there isn't one. But I don't believe there's a rule in this case that you have to stand at a certain angle to be a legitimate athlete worthy of a photo on the podium that you earned your right to be on. Alexa and Jessica, we're following this case very closely. Continue to be a great athlete and a great role model, Alexa, for what you're doing. You're a star.
Is this even a conversation? Is this what the Democrats are supposed to be talking about? Men and women's sport? Is this even something to be heard? What?
Elon Musk's done with D.C., but the left's acting like that crazy stalker X who refuses to let go of their Doge whipping boy. I mean, Bono thinks he's a mass murderer.
It's not proven, but the surveillance enough suggests 300,000 people have already died from just this cut off, this hard cut of USAID. So there's food rotting in boats, in warehouses.
You add them all up, that's 300,000 dead. There are mass murderers in the world, Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, Stalin. We don't have anybody on the list for America.
Musk also having to school fake news reporters who keep trying to drive a wedge between him and President Trump.
Wondering what your thought is on the ban on foreign students, the proposal. I mean, you were one of those kids, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to stick to, the subject of the day, which is like spaceships, as opposed to, presidential policy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was told anything is good, but...
No.
But Musk was willing to talk about the Doge firestorm.
It's a bit unfair because, Doge became the whooping boy for everything.
But now Musk's getting some vindication on one big lie the media kept pushing. The billionaire ripping the liberal press for hypocrisy, saying Cory Booker's recent hand wave looked like a Nazi salute. Musk noting, quote, fate loves irony, but hates hypocrisy. Emily, the Nazi salute, what happened there?
I can't. It doesn't suit the narrative. It doesn't fit their playbook, the same tired, fatigued playbook that we're all subjected to. I actually was sort of surprised, you guys, because in their eye of Sauron, who they deem as like their Hitler, which is so horrible, I'm surprised that it's still continuing to be on Elon. And the reality is that it's because there hasn't been someone else. Someone else hasn't cropped up yet, and it hasn't transferred back to President Trump, right? We're going to talk about later how the economic policies, positive things, there's no way that will garner any type of limelight. But at the end of the day, the reality is they're just following him around. But here's the thing. All of the good that USAID has done, there will never be any limelight whatsoever on who the actual oppressors are. Is it the dollars being taken back, or was it Hamas that's refusing to let people get aid that wasn't even part of USAID to begin with? The truth is so much further from this peddling lie that they're doing. But apparently all you have to do is say, it's not proven yet, as your opener to the sentence before you say anything, and you'll still be applauded.
Yeah, where are they getting this 300,000 number from, Harold?
I don't know. I'm not persuaded
I know where it is,
that it's right. I think, again, government is too big, and it is too far removed from kind of the everyday machinations of people's lives. They listen to politicians, if you could like President Trump, and he sometimes talks about things that make you feel good, but a lot of times I don't know how a lot of what any of them, Democrat or Republican, are talking about that really impacts people's lives. Now, what Democrats have to understand is because government is so big, people want to see it reform. Just like in the private sector, you read every day how CEOs of big companies, small companies alike, are having to make really tough, hard decisions about laying people off, about not investing in something going forward because there may be some economic uncertainty. And this is not even being critical of the terrorists. I'll do that later. But whenever you have a moment where there's uncertainty, people have to make tough choices. Government, on the other hand, just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I think both parties are responsible for this. But what President Trump is getting the benefit of is that he and Elon Musk are trying their hardest to bring some sanity to how we do things and explain to people why we do things. But I'll give you an example of why I think he's probably going to be criticized a little bit more in the coming weeks. The weather services are predicting today that we'll have an above average storm season, hurricane season. President Trump rightly said right when he took office that FEMA needed to be reformed. He one time said he was going to end it, but I really think he meant reforming. And he said a few months ago he wanted to reform it. We've now had 15% less staff than we had at FEMA beforehand. Even the leader of FEMA, it's been leaked, has said that he doesn't know if we have a strategic plan or a plan in place ready to deal with the 13 to 19 storms or hurricanes we get this season. I hope I'm dead wrong. But these are the kinds of things I would love to see Mr. Musk put that big brain around and say, how do we make FEMA work better? How do we make FEMA work with the money that it has? Or if it needs more, here's how it can be spent more effectively. But in the end, don't criticize reforms, Democrats. Offer better ideas and better strategies to do it yourself.
Well, Dana, it is nice to know that the Republicans are already going to be blamed for hurricane season.
No.
Yes.
We get blamed for terrorist attacks.
So one of the things that's hard to take seriously is how much the left loved Elon Musk until they hated him. And you've seen this before. And you're right, Emily. Who's the next one going to be? Like, we all wait to see who they're going to choose. It'll be somebody. It might be Jesse.
I hope it's Greg.
And the other thing is you think about how they legitimized calling Donald Trump Hitler or Elon Musk Hitler, and then what happened? Like, we actually had domestic terrorism events perpetrated against people who own Teslas because people all of a sudden hated Elon Musk. I'm not saying what he did was perfect, even great. It might be good. I think maybe it ends up costing taxpayers more in the long run. The idea of cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, fabulous. Let's keep it going. And Russell Vought will continue to do that. But the media also, they all were desperate to get interviews with him. Why? Because they wanted to put him on the spot, and it helps their ratings. So we're just on the same merry-go-round.
Take us home, Greg.
Well, I'm not sure many people know this, but Bono is a mass murderer. Yes, the U2's last album caused 75,000 music lovers to commit suicide. It was that awful. How do you know a number is false? I'll tell you where the number came from. Harold, since you didn't know, some people do the research before the show. Not unlike you, just hang out at cocktail lounges. It was a speculative model. It didn't exist. It was a hypothetical computer model, just like the climate change models. It's always not real. It never materializes. Anything, here's a rule of thumb. If it's repeated like a chant the moment you hear it, it's a lie. It was the case with the recent Gaza massacre that just was portrayed. Or let's talk about the pay gap between men and women. That was portrayed as like, oh, and then you look at it and you go, it's not all there. I also like how the media covers the Booker story as the reaction, again, to the Booker story. Not that, oh, look what he did. Look what he did. It's more like right-wing media pounces on Booker's story, because that absolves them of their obvious deception, hypocrisy. You can't hate the media enough. They suck. They deserve to go away forever. That brings me to David Brooks. And also a rare moment, Dana, for you. I'm going to take a nod from the Sermon on the Mount, Gospel of Matthew, chapter 7. Do you remember when he says, the person says, help me, let me pull the mote out of your eye, but do not consider the beam in your own eye? That's never Trumpism. It's completely.
Wait, Greg's quoting the Bible and I'm quoting Maya Angelou?
Yes. I wanted to do you better. But think about it. Think about what never Trumpism is. It's a person that is constantly screaming at you like, don't you see? Right. Don't you see how evil this man is? Yeah. And by connection, how evil Musk is. And it's like, dude, what? It's so ironic that it's a beam and Trump is in construction. But it is. It is. And it's like, dude, all you see is Trump. And think about everything you're getting wrong. You're so miserable and unhappy. You wake up every morning and you predict everything incorrectly because you've got this beam in your eye. I always think about like people like David Brooks. What if you let go of this? What if you just admitted that, okay, I got this wrong. The sunk cost is too much. how would I feel? Would I feel better? I mean, think about David Brooks. He wasn't this bad. Something happened to him. It's his ego. It's kind of sad. I'm here for you, David. But I stopped reading it because
We must stay on the positive. From Maya Angelou to the New Testament, we shall overcome. We come along.
All right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
It's the thing with liberals. They just go deeper and deeper, and it becomes TDS. And it becomes TDS Pro Max. And it becomes craziness at the end of the day where they result in violence. And that's just wild. Just because I don't agree with you, just because I'm saying I would never vote for someone like Joe Biden, all of a sudden you're trying to stab me or something. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing, liberals? And this man keeps winning every single time just because Americans are saying we are tired of liberal BS.
Katie McFarland, now former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump during his first term. Katie, it's wonderful to see you. Here's what the Wall Street Journal wrote yesterday about this series of raids. They write, they won't alter the course of the war, but they do show the ability of Ukraine to strike far from its border with Russia. The intelligence required to pull off the operation, supposedly in the planning for 18 months, is also reason for the Kremlin to be discomfited. Did Ukraine have some Russian help? What do you make of the insinuation there that these drone attacks are evidence that some of Putin's own military and intelligence personnel maybe are turning on him?
He's got to be nervous because what this attack has shown, and it was just brilliant by the Ukrainians, unprecedented, brilliant, very effective. But what it shows is how incompetent the Russian military is. And in an odd way, this makes peace agreements or peace talks far less likely than they were even 48 hours ago. Why? Because on one hand, Ukraine is thinking, whoa, you know, we're pretty good at this. We want to keep going. And on the other hand, Vladimir Putin's got to be thinking to himself, okay, I thought I was going to have a great summer offensive to get back territory, that I'll be in a really strong position to negotiate or to even keep fighting. But Putin's got to be a little nervous now about his own longevity, because if he goes to a negotiating table, Jillian, and he looks like he's making any concessions, his own people are going to say, well, what's this war been about? To give up, this is not good. So I think Putin's got to worry about whether he's got problems at home, which will really preclude his ability to do any kind of negotiating.
I mean, to that point, the reality is that Russia has spent probably more than 2 years in this thing than they had planned on. They have lost tens of thousands of lives, more than they had counted on, spent billions of dollars more. At what point does Putin really need to account for the fact that he's just feeding lives into this grist mill that he has created?
Exactly. Pride.
You know, despite, and all the things that you said are absolutely correct, but popular opinion in Russia is actually in favor of continuing the war, of getting Ukraine back. Why? Because the economy in Russia hasn't suffered, mostly because of Biden's energy policies. Russia still has fairly high reserves from oil prices being high and the oil that they've sold, even illegally that they sold. And also because Putin's drawn the population, he's not drawn from the middle class in the cities or the educated people or the elites. He's drawn his cannon fodder, if you will, from the rural areas. So it's not really
and
being
North
felt
Korea,
in
I
Moscow
guess.
Central. And North Korea, and who knows what the Chinese are doing. So I think that all of a sudden the incentives for Putin are to keep fighting. Why? Because if he stops fighting, he might be in big trouble at home. The big decision now is going to be Donald Trump's. It's going to land on his desk. What is he going to do? Is he going to impose crippling economic sanctions on Russia to really devastate their economy, to force Putin to have an agreement? Or is he going to look at Ukraine and say, look, you guys don't want peace either. I'm going to pull back, I'm going to withhold, or I'm not going to resupply Ukraine. So really the major decision maker is going to be.
My opinion is someone has to actually show Vladimir Putin that you are not God, okay? Someone has to do it. And if it happens to be Trump, I am going to support it. I will 1000% support it, because somebody has to show Vladimir Putin that you've done it for years, for decades actually, okay? Taking Georgia, taking he's been taking so many land for years, claiming it's part of the Kremlin or whatever. So somebody has to stop him. Okay, somebody has to show him that relax. Okay, we could play the game as well, and I believe that person is Trump. I believe that person is Trump, and if he does it, Putin is not going to want to go down easy. But if anybody could actually do it, it would be Trump.
Be Donald Trump.
What would you like to see him do?
Wow, it's a really tough one. Nobody wants to reward Russia for what they've done. Everyone is thinking Ukraine has done so well, but on the other hand, this war could continue on and on. And as President Trump has said, he's a man of peace, and he really hates the loss and the futility of war. So I think he's got to thread that needle very carefully. Can he use economic sanctions on Russia to bring him to the negotiating table? Can he use pressure on Zelensky to bring him to the negotiating table? Can he broker a deal where each side can walk away claiming victory, but at least the war stops? I don't know. It's going to test Donald Trump's deal-making abilities to.
Exactly. And that's what Russia, well, maybe not Russian people, but Vladimir Putin, this is what he's trying to do. He wants to see how far he can go with a leader, a juggernaut, a Don, an OG like Trump. He wants to see how far he could go. He wants to see how far he can push Trump. And he wants to see what Trump will do. So I like the fact that Trump is being patient. He's been calling Putin is a good guy, he's my friend. And all of a sudden he says Putin is crazy. And after he says Putin is crazy, after he said the only reason bad things hasn't happened to Russia is because of him. And a couple of days later, this happens to Russia. Now, am I saying that the United States knows about this attack? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, just referencing what he said on Truth Social, he said it's because of him that bad things hasn't happened to Russia yet. And days later, this happens to Russia. So, man, Putin must be thinking the same thing, like, is this guy also trying to destroy me? He may be thinking that as well. I just hope it doesn't lead to some sort of escalation with Russia to the United States. But the OG posted this on Truth Social. He said, let me go see what he posted on Truth Social. Give me a moment. Let's see. All right, so this was 8 hours ago. President Donald Trump posted this on Truth Social. He says, I just had a great talk with our military leaders. It is the strongest military we've ever had, including the fact that we are stockpiling weapons at a rate never, ever seen before by our country. Hopefully, however, we will never have to use them. So, posting this because he knows every leader on earth is watching what he does. He knows Vladimir Putin is watching everything he does. So Putin is reading this saying, okay, you're stockpiling on weapons at a rate never seen before by your country. And then he goes by saying, hopefully, however, we will never have to use them. It's not a threat. It's like, don't wake the sleeping lion. The lion sleeps for a long, long, long time. But when he wakes up and he decides to just look around and say, you know what? I'm hungry. That's what Donald Trump is doing right now. He's calm. He's calm. He's been talking about peace, 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 peace. We want peace. We're not going to start any war. We're never going to do. He's the sleeping lion. And if he decides to roar, Trump is a very eccentric person. He's very unpredictable, very absolutely unpredictable. And I don't want to see Trump go crazy. I don't want to see Trump go crazy. People like Trump, when they go crazy, it's hard to stop. It's like, because he's been operating at the highest level for years. This man has been a billionaire since like what? The 70s, the 80s. This man has been known as the big giant of development. As a developer in New York, this guy brought back the economy in New York. If you guys remember, there was a time in New York where real estate market was going to trash the economy. Nobody was going to New York. This man built, at the time, it was the tallest building in New York. Do you know what it takes to become the largest, most respected developer in New York? You must be a gangster, because there are gangsters in New York. You think gangsters as in threatened Trump before? You think they didn't come threaten him and say, he was in his 30s. You think they didn't threaten him saying, you know what? Yeah, we're going to end you. We're going to make sure you don't build this building. Think he said, oh, please, don't stop me. Trump is like the real gangster, yo. But in this case, it involves lives. So I don't want him to go crazy as well. I hope he doesn't go crazy. But I just know people like Trump, he's a sleeping lion. You don't want to, he's going to bring down hell. So I just hope this doesn't get to that point, because this is in our war. This is in the United States war. But I just also hope Vladimir Putin doesn't try to do something crazy, thinking this is because of the United States.
The extreme.
Does it surprise you, real quick, KT, before I have to let you go, in the last couple of weeks to see President Trump expressing surprise at Putin? At one point, he even said he felt betrayed by him.
Yeah, I think he's frustrated. He thought that Putin would respond to economic pressure, which Trump can put on. And Putin somehow seems to want to go for broke. So you might have a situation where neither side really wants to settle. Both sides want to keep fighting.
All right, KT McFarland, great to talk to you as always. Thank you.
Hopefully, Ukraine settles this, because this is just, it's been going on for too long. Too long, yo. Absolutely too long. Well, the crippling sanctions needs to start going into effect right now, like ASAP. ASAP. People are dying, yo. All right, the OG himself.
It was a great trip to a fantastic place, the Commonwealth, Pennsylvania. The steelworkers are very happy. We did the tariffs. It's going to make them even more competitive. And it's turning out to be a great deal. I think it's going to be a fantastic deal. $17 billion is being invested for new steel mills, new everything. And it's going to be something special. So that was in honor of the steelworkers of Pennsylvania, and it was a fantastic time. We had a great day, and it is raining quite hard, but that's okay. How are you? Go ahead.
Can you make Pennsylvania the steel capital of the world again?
I think that's going to happen. I think it's going to happen. Not much. We just had $17 billion given, and again, we're going to have control in the U.S. It's going to be a USA deal. The board is controlled. More importantly, the money's built, it's spent on facilities. You can't take them and leave and let's put them on a boat. Somebody said, well, what about that? Supposing they leave. Well, the money's invested on on brick and mortar. You can't lift it up and take it. But I think much more importantly, that's going to be a great partnership. And the company Nippon is coming in with $17 billion plus. So it's going to be fantastic for all steelworkers. This is an investment. It's controlled by the United States, and more importantly, they're spending the money on brick and mortar. You can't take it. What are you going to do? Pick it up and move it to Japan? That's not going to happen. And, I rejected this about 4 times now, and when they finally got it right, I liked it a lot. And you could see how happy the steelworkers were. More importantly, you could see from the union standpoint, the union loved it.
Mr. Bowden, it needs thousands of jobs in Pennsylvania, right? That's really important for the state of Pennsylvania going forward, isn't it?
I like this man.
Were you aware of Elon Musk's regular drug use?
No, I wasn't. I think he's fantastic. I think Elon is a fantastic. troubled by anything with Elon. I think he's fantastic. Did a great job. And, Doge continues. And by the time it's finished, we'll have numbers that'll knock your socks off. It's going to be, he did a fantastic job. And he didn't need it. He didn't need to do it.
How do you replace him?
He's not easily replaced. He really No, I have to approve the final deal. Well, you'll see. But I have to approve the final deal with Nippon. And we haven't seen that final deal yet. But they've made a very big commitment, and it's a very big investment. It's the largest investment in the history of the state of Pennsylvania in any deal, not just steel. And it's thousands of steel workers, and not only there, all throughout the country.
Mr. President, do you support the Lindsey Graham Blumenthal bill that would levy sanctions on Russia?
I don't know. I have to see it. I'll take a look at it.
Are you confident that your proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza that was just submitted this week will get approved by Hamas?
I think they want to get out of that mess. They're in a big mess. I think they want to get out of it. Well, Japan very much wants to make a trade deal. I don't think this has much to do with it, but certainly it certainly won't hurt because we have a very good relationship with Japan. But as you know, Japan is in there right now negotiating as we speak, and they want to very much make a deal. I think the deal I'm most proud of is the fact that we're dealing with India, we're dealing with Pakistan, and we were able to stop potentially a nuclear war through trade as opposed through bullets. Normally they do it through bullets. We do it through trade. So I'm very proud of that. Nobody talks about it, but we had a very nasty potential war going on between Pakistan and India. And now if you look, they're doing fine. That was getting very bad. That was getting very nasty. They're both nuclear powers. The Pakistan representatives are coming in next week. And India, as you know, we're very close to making a deal with India. And I wouldn't have any interest in making a deal with either if they were going to be at war with each other. I would not, and I let them know.
Your message is the G7 here in 2 weeks. You're going to Canada. Mark Carney up there obviously has a different view of the world than you do. When it comes to energy, clearly, what's your message going to be at G7 here in a couple weeks?
Well, it's in Canada, and he's a very nice guy, by the way, Mark Carney. I think he's really a very nice person, and we've had some good talks. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I've heard that, yeah. No, she's an amazing woman. She can handle it. But I've heard that they breached her phones or they tried to impersonate her. Nobody can impersonate Susie. Nobody. There's only one Susie.
Mr. President, what's your message to Chinese college students in the United States that want to stay in the United States?
Well, they're going to be okay. It's going to work out fine. We just want to check out the individual students. That's true with all colleges. And I don't know why Harvard's not giving us the list. There's something going on because Harvard's not giving us a list. They ought to give us a list and get themselves out of trouble. But they don't want to give the list because they have names on there that supposedly are quite bad. We want people that can love our country and take care of our country and cherish our country. And for some reason, Harvard doesn't want to give us a list. I would suggest you all get out of the rain now. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good time. Thank you.
And somebody says this guy is not cognitively well. Bunch of, I don't want to say fools, but seems like. All right, so did you know that yesterday, which was Monday, because today is Tuesday already, it's 3 a.m. in the South. All right, so Russia and Ukraine actually met to get to this ceasefire deal, but Russia is asking for way crazy things, yo. Russia wants to keep Crimea. Just bunch of BS, yo. All right, so Russia, it's restated that Moscow demands that Ukraine become a neutral country, ruling out membership of NATO. It's part of the ceasefire situation that is going on right now. If they still, if they say they don't want to be part of NATO, Russia is going to chill. But if they keep saying they want to be a part of NATO, Russia is going to keep on firing at Ukraine. And also, Russia is saying that Ukraine should make Russian language the official language and enact a legal ban on glorification of Nazism. Of course, Ukraine rejects the Nazi charge as absurd and denies discriminating against Russian speakers. So Russia is saying that any Russian in Ukraine speaking Russia or Russian language, that they should be allowed to speak their Russian language. But Ukraine is saying you can speak whatever language you want to speak. Also, option one, according to this note right here from Reuters, it says option one, according to the test, was for Ukraine to start a full military withdrawal from Luhansk, or whatever the name is, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Zahonsa, or Zerson regions. Of those, Russia fully controls the first, but holds only about 70% of the rest. Option two is the package that would require Ukraine to cease military redeployment and accept a halt to foreign provisions of military aid. If they do that, it's over for Ukraine. Also, satellite communication and intelligence should not be taken from foreign aid. That's just crazy. Kyiv would also have to lift martial law and hold presidential and parliamentary elections within 100 days. That part is sort of tricky because Zelensky, his term is really officially over, but because of the war, Ukraine cannot have an election. So it's tricky. A Russian delegation head Vladimir Medinsky said Moscow had also suggested a specific ceasefire of 2 to 3 days in certain section of the front so that the bodies of the dead soldiers could be collected. Crazy. According to a proposed roadmap drawn by Ukraine, a copy of which was seen by Reuters, Kyiv wants no restrictions on its military strength after any peace deal, no international recognition of Russian sovereignty over part of Ukraine taken by Moscow forces, and reparations. So basically, Russia wants Ukraine isolated from NATO, from allies like the United States. So, I mean, what would Ukraine have after that? There would basically be nothing if that happens. I don't know what Putin thinking about, but I can tell you, these are real situations happening. Anyway, let's check out this commerce tariff situation, and that might be it.
JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon saying this morning that the U.S. needs to get our act together because a crack in the bond market with implications for everyone from everyday Americans and small businesses to the government is going to happen.
Yeah, major development. Joining us now to discuss, Ed Luce, U.S. national editor and columnist for the Financial Times. Thanks so much for joining us. Ed, what do you make of this latest warning from Dimon?
Well, Dimon, I think, is speaking for most of Wall Street and the bond markets in saying that this crack is something that's not going to go away unless there's a radical change in policy. And that involves, a much more rational approach and predictable, a forecastable approach to how the US handles its trade disputes, and B, a budget that doesn't spill as much red ink as this big, beautiful bill that has been passed by the House spills, more than $3 trillion worth of addition to the US national debt. And Jamie Dimon's been sort of sounding this alarm with more and more urgency, I think, over the past few weeks. He's not going to stop sounding it unless the conditions that have led him to make these warnings go away. And I don't think there are many signs they are going to go away. This trade war is in full throttle.
And we actually heard Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent respond to this yesterday. And he said he sort of downplayed the concerns about the bond market and so forth. And he also talked about the expectations of President Trump and President Xi of China that they could speak this week on terms of a trade deal. Watch this and we'll get your reaction on the other side.
I am confident that when President Trump and Party Chairman Xi have a call, that this will be ironed out.
How does this ongoing tension with China ultimately hurt U.S. interests?
Well, so there's been a lot of confusion about calls between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping of China. Last month, late April, Trump told Time magazine in an interview that he'd spoken to Xi Jinping and that they'd resolved some issues. And the Chinese Foreign Ministry was forced to issue a denial. They had not spoken. It turns out the last time the two men spoke was a few days before Trump was inaugurated in January. And then in the last few weeks, again and again, we've been told by White House officials, including Scott Bessent, Kevin Hassett, the economic advisor, that a call between the two was imminent and that this call would be the key to unlocking lots of other trade disputes, not just the one between the US and China. And so I think until it actually happens, we should treat it with a pinch of salt. It may well be that they have finally scheduled a call between the two, but until it happens, I have to say I'm skeptical that A, it's going to happen, and B, that if it does happen, it will be this grand sort of conversation that will finally unravel their differences. Their differences are too deep to be fixed by one phone call.
Your colleague at the Financial Times, Ed, as you know, coined the acronym TACO, T-A-C-O, Trump always chickens out. This refers to Trump's often backing off tariffs in the face of pressure on the U.S. bond market. If we continue to see the market volatility as it's ongoing right now amid Trump's ongoing push for more tariffs, do you expect the president to back down?
Yes, my colleague Robert Armstrong has, I think, entered meme immortality with that TACO coinage, because that acronym, does describe to date how this pattern has evolved, with Trump threatening big tariffs with China, for example, 145%, which would essentially have been decoupling from China. And then you see bond prices plummet, yields soar, and Trump then hitting pauses. And this has happened several times. So it is a pattern. I don't know whether this will stop Trump from doing so again, because his 50% tariff last week on Europe, came after several of these events where he's marched his troops to the top of the hill, if you like, and then had to march them down again. Again, I'm skeptical that Trump is going to change his ways. He likes surprising people in negotiations. He thinks he's got a lot of leverage. He's always believed trade wars are easy to win. And so I think we're going to see more of these stop-go moments, because the bond markets have a very clear view. And Trump has a very consistent instinct about trade that's really dates back decades.
Ed Luce, thank you very, very much.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says tariffs, quote, are not going away as President Trump's trade plans face legal battles. The president warns there will be economic ramifications if the courts step in and block the tariffs. With us now is Ken Rogoff, economics professor at Harvard. Professor, great to see you this morning. And if I can, I'd like to take a big step back from the day-to-day here, because you've been talking a lot about this, that the impact of what President Trump has done has begun to fundamentally change the U.S. role in the world economy. So what impact are you already beginning to see there?
Well, I think that foreigners heavily invest into the United States. They hold a lot of our treasury bills. It gives us a lower interest rate. I don't think there's any question that they're pedaling back. Maybe they were before Trump, but even faster. There's very hard to undo this damage. I don't think anyone will ever trust us the same way again.
And I'm reading, this is CNBC this morning, has a whole piece where they write about the anywhere but the USA trade. I don't have the acronym right, but the anywhere but the USA trade that they see some evidence is rising by investors. What do you think of that?
No, you see that everywhere. I don't want to get into the weeds, but there are a number of technical phenomenon that suggest that indeed there's been pullback. I mean, Trump's head of his Council of Economic Advisors has a plan that would basically default largely on foreign official holders of U.S. treasuries. If you're China or even the UK and you're holding a lot of U.S. treasuries and you have this sitting in front of you and you just saw what he did with tariffs, you're going to think about it. So there's no question about that. And then we have other things like his tax bill has something about taxing foreign investors. So absolutely, we're going through a period where our so-called privilege of getting to have foreigners hold so much of our debt's being called into doubt. And it's going to hurt us for a long time to come. We'll pay a higher interest rate. As you know, John, we have budget deficit and debt problems. And if you have a higher interest rate, they're worse.
You've written over the years, what you've written about Trump is a little bit nuanced, right? I mean, you gave him some credit for assessing some of the economic realities in the United States, and then occasionally over the years in his first term, pushing things forward and then pulling back when he sees some of the impact and some of the coverage of it. But what about now, when people are talking about the so-called, taco effects, that Trump always chickens out of the tariffs? Is this the type of thing that's maneuvering in a politically adept way, or the type of thing where he loses credibility?
Well, I think obviously the reason he's so sensitive about saying he chickens out is because so far it looks like that. Don't just look at the tariff negotiations, look at his dealing with Putin, who maybe now the Ukraine strike will make a difference, where they're seeming racing to get a nuclear bomb. Look at his dealings with other countries, none of whom have signed on. Now, the whole game is ahead. But to your point, in the past, he has exhibited pragmatism. When something doesn't work, he will pull back, at least in the economic sphere. I don't want to speak of the social one. And I think that's been one of his strengths. But on these tariffs, he just seems obsessed with the idea. And I think that's one of the things people are scaring them. Frankly, if he lost these court cases, and there's some very heavy hitter lawyers weighing in on it, I'm not. But if he were to lose, it'd be the best thing that happened to his administration. The whole tariff war is just a terrible idea for the United States. I still think the damage would be done because people would be worrying about other things. But
I definitely go.
He seems less pragmatic in Trump too.
How much damage has been done? How much relatively permanent damage do you think has been done already?
Man, please.
I mean,
coming from the same people that told you that Joe Biden was sharp as nails, how much damage has he done? From you? Nobody believes you. Talking about how much damage has he done? I thought you told us Joe Biden was ready to go. Ready to go. Now you're here talking about how much damage has he done. Man, somebody get me a deportation special, number 2. And the green card meal. All right, here we go.
Ukrainian and Russian delegations are in Istanbul for peace talks, The real story, though, this unprecedented and audacious drone attack by Ukraine on Russian airfields and bombers. Ukraine attacked bases deep inside Russia, thousands of miles from the front lines, in what they're calling Operation Spiderweb. Ukrainian officials said that dozens of Russian warplanes were destroyed. Let's get right to CNN Chief International Correspondent Nick Payton-Walsh. This is quite a backdrop for these talks, which take place shortly, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely startling, the sophistication of this raid. One of these air bases hit almost halfway across Siberia. The Ukrainian security service able to use mobile wooden homes. Essentially, the roofs of them seem to have opened up and allowed these clouds of drones remotely piloted to target some of Russia's most important long-range strategic bombers. 41 damaged, according to Ukraine's security service, at air bases that must have thought they were basically far enough away to be impregnable. Ukraine very keen to announce that all the people involved in this year-and-a-half-long operation have since left the country. And yet another sign of how Ukraine's able to use its outsized use of technology to inflict significant damage on Russia's enormous military, something which, frankly, Kiev has always felt would be impregnable, but is increasingly showing its vulnerability over time. What does this mean? We don't know exactly what damage it's going to do to the nightly horrors inflicted on Ukrainian civilians by these long-range bombers. Some of them, indeed, were old enough they were still using propellers. But it's another sign that Ukraine is able to sometimes upset the balance. And as you mentioned, too, a remarkable backdrop for these talks in Istanbul. Here's what Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky at a NATO summit in Vilnius today had to say.
Europe, together with America, has better weapons than Russia. We also have stronger tactical solutions. Our Operation Spiderweb yesterday proved that. Russia must feel what its losses mean. That is what will push it toward diplomacy. And when Russia takes losses in this war, it's obvious to everyone that Ukraine is the one holding the line, not just for itself, but for all of Europe.
You could see in his arrival in Vilnius.
Dang. Zelensky, I don't know. He's getting some confidence, yo. Okay, Zelensky. All right. C. Shelley. Shout out to C. Shelley, one of our esteemed moderator. God bless you, C. Shelley. C. Shelley says, I appreciate all of your effort, Genesis. Much love to everyone here tonight. Shout out to C. Shelley. God bless you. Now, with that being said, Zelensky, he's talking tough, yo. He's talking tough. You hear what he said here? He's talking about Ukraine is powerful, much more than Russia. I don't know now. I don't know. Relax, Zelensky.
Europe, together with America, has better weapons than Russia. We also have stronger tactical solutions. Our Operation Spiderweb yesterday proved that. Russia must feel what its losses mean. That is what will push it toward diplomacy. And when Russia takes losses in this war, it's obvious to everyone that Ukraine is the one holding the line, not just for itself, but for all of Europe.
You could see in his arrival in Vilnius, Zelensky there with a bit of a spring in his step, frankly. A long-needed boost to Ukrainian morale.
Spring in his
so
step.
badly after that Oval Office blow-up with President Donald Trump. Does this change Russia's thinking? Well, many felt these peace talks in Istanbul were another example of Moscow's slow rolling, a peace process that had very minimal interest in seeing lead to a ceasefire. But it may make the Kremlin begin to wonder if surprises like this come along frequently enough, how long they can sustain this conflict, and it may do practical damage to their war effort too, John. So a remarkable weekend here. I should point out too, record number of drones launched by Russia over the weekend, and a startling number taken out by Ukraine's electronic warfare too. So technology increasingly on Ukraine's side, John.
Yeah, Ukraine very much trying to increase the costs on Russia and what impact that could have on discussions going forward. Nick Payton-Walsh for us. Thank you, Nick.
Let's get more now on these major developments. With us now is Admiral James
Stavridis, he is a CNN senior military analyst and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. Also, CNN senior political commentator and former Congressman Adam Kinzinger. He's also a former member of the House Armed Services and Foreign Affairs Committee and served in the Air National Guard. Good to see both of you. Thank you so much. Congressman, you first. Do you think this is a game changer or of some other significance that Ukraine could pull this off?
Yeah, look, this is a huge deal. This is, I would actually say this is right there with when Ukraine had their very successful counteroffensive. Keep in mind, we've recently had, the President of the United States say that Ukraine doesn't hold any cards. This is cards. This is a serious amount of cards, by the way. Potentially taking out a third of Russia's bomber force is what this could potentially be, is a hit like no other. And keep in mind, Ukraine is actually winning this war as a defending country. All you have to do to win is keep defending until the attacker runs out of combat power. At the beginning of the full-scale invasion, Russia occupied 30% of Ukraine. Today, it's 18%. They've lost 1 million men, casualties in that process,
Jesus.
and now potentially a third of their bomber force. This is a really big deal.
1 million men? God. Oh, man. 1 million men. I mean, what are those men gonna say when they meet Creator of heavens and the earth? What are they gonna say? I was fighting for my country? Or some of them that were just killed for nothing. 1 million men sacrificing human beings that we cannot create. Only God creates people, life, and breathe air into their nostrils. God owns every soul. And yet, men of flesh and bones and blood send their fellow men of flesh, bones, and blood to their ending. Because of what? Pride. Ego. I'm not going to agree with you. Okay. I'm going to send men to you, and you're going to send men to me, and we're going to kill each other. For what? For lands. For nothing. For disputes. That we could just sit down, have a red wine, or whatever you do, smoke a blunt, or whatever you want to do, sit down together as both leaders and talk it out. Whatever you have to do, just sit down as leaders and talk it out. Nope. You're going to send 1 million men to their ending. Most of these men definitely have families, kids, wives. But what?
Potentially going into negotiations, and keep in mind, up until this point, Russia's been attacking indiscriminately civilian targets in Ukraine all week, all month, and frankly, the entire war.
So, Admiral, what does this say about Ukraine's, is it heightened intelligence gathering, or is it a new directive or strategy?
It's all the above, and I'll add a couple. It is a clever tactic. What they did was put these drones, quadcopter drones, into trucks. They got them deep inside Russia. A way to think about these strikes, this would be like launching from Washington, D.C. and attacking targets in Los Angeles. I mean,
okay, relax. Don't use the United States. Okay, relax about talking about D.C. and California. Relax. Use somewhere else.
Russia's a huge country, largest in the world. These strikes are at distance, exactly as Congressman, and by the way, you left out his most important credential for this conversation. He's an Air Force pilot, so he really understands the air distance equation and how remarkable this is. So, Fred, put together the unmanned technology, the intelligence of the locations, and the military savvy to load it on trucks, get it across this vast country, launch it at scale and at distance. I think it's a remarkable strike. I'm Greek American, so I've got to give you this. It's kind of the Trojan horse. It's these wooden crates that got pushed into the country, and suddenly sprouting forth from it are these warriors destroying all of these planes, none of them human beings. It's really quite a remarkable military feat.
So then, Congressman, clearly Ukraine is likely preparing for some sort of retaliation, but at the same time, what does this kind of successful, attack from their standpoint do to the morale for Ukrainian fighters?
This is huge for Ukrainian morale. This is devastating for Russian morale. Now, keep in mind in this process, we're going to see, so Ukraine is going to see how Russia responds to this. They've seen how Russia does or does not, in this case, does not defend their military bases, and they're going to adjust from that. There likely could be many more attacks like this kind of on the perch, ready to go in Russia. And now all of a sudden, Russia has had to go from defending its air bases and its military stuff, basically, within 500 or 1,000 kilometers of the front line to the entire amount of Russia. And keep in mind, they're already almost out of air defense as it is. They had to move almost all their air defenses to Moscow just to defend their parade. So this is a big deal. And for Americans, it's important to remember this. We have a choice. We can either help Ukraine defend itself, and if we do, we'll have a bit of a say in how Ukraine defends itself. If we don't, Ukraine's got to do what they can do. And again, it's important to keep in mind, every one of these targets today was a legitimate, under the rule of war, legitimate target for Ukraine to strike. What you will see in the Russian response is an attack on schools, on hospitals, on civilian infrastructure, because that's what Russia does. Ukraine fights fair, Russia goes after civilians.
And then now, Admiral, all this taking place, on the eve, give or take a few days of, this meeting that is supposed to be taking place in Turkey between Russia and Ukrainian representatives. How might this either change the dynamic, apply more pressure, or might it mean a complete retreat from even having talks like this, meaning Russia retreating?
I wouldn't be surprised to see the Russians put a freeze on things. On the other hand, more likely they'll try and kind of brazen their way through it and say, we caught all the people who did this. There'll be a bunch of round up the usual suspect operations. Ukraine, by the way, was very careful to point out that everybody involved in this is already back in Ukraine. So anybody you arrest, Russia, is wrong. I believe that, frankly. And then secondly, again, the innovation on display here, I think, is really what you have to focus on. And so I would say the talks probably freeze momentarily, then they'll move forward. Hey, final thought for you as I watch this, as a former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, people ask me a lot, hey, do we really want to take Ukraine into the alliance? When this war is over, this is going to be a country manufacturing 2 million, maybe 3 million drones a year. They'll have the most highly blooded, motivated military force on the continent. Do we want them on Team NATO? Man, I do.
Congressman, as the Admiral was saying, this really is a display of innovation, too, in terms of this strategy. How do you think that will land with President Trump, who, has not been completely supportive of Ukraine, if you want to put it that way, and he has claimed, however, he was disappointed, though, in the behavior of Putin. But how might this potentially influence a more definitive point of view coming from the president?
Well, let me just say, I couldn't have said better than what the Admiral said about the importance of Ukraine and how they would be an asset to NATO. Look, so what does this mean for President Trump? Look, I don't know. He has yet to really attack Putin. I would not be surprised. I would be saddened, but I would not be surprised if he somehow blames Zelensky for the stalling of the negotiations in this case. I hope he doesn't. Because keep in mind, this is the crazy thing. This is a massive attack, right? Again, against legitimate military targets. All week leading up to today, Russia has been sending drones and ballistic missiles into Ukraine after civilian targets, but for some reason, they never get blamed for stalling negotiations. So my hope is the administration and President Trump, finally kind of turns the corner here and at least gets out of Ukraine's way and allows Ukraine and Europe to defend themselves.
Talking about gets out of Ukraine's way.
would be saddened, but
Ukraine has been taking billions of munitions from the United States. What do you mean get out of Ukraine's way? Relax. And if he blames Ukraine, it's called the art of war. In my opinion, that's what I would call it. Because I mean, what is it supposed to do? Great, we attacked Russia. So what? Russia should get crazy and try to do something wild? No, I think it should. Even if he wanted to say something good, I think he should play it like he is still supporting. Well, maybe not supporting, but he should play it like a leader. Okay, like like someone who knows exactly what the art of war is. In my opinion, even if I had something to do with it as a leader, I'm just gonna say, you know what, Ukraine, you guys shouldn't have done that. Of course, of course. I mean, what am I supposed to say? Yeah, we did it. Nah. Okay, you have to protect the homeland, and that's what his job is. That's why he was elected as president of the United States. He cannot jeopardize the peace and safety of the United States, regardless of how much these folks want him to just go crazy. Nah, he has to protect America first, okay? So, whatever he has to say, whatever he has to do is what he's going to do, and that's what he's going to say. Okay? Everybody's talking about, of course I want Putin to be stopped, but I don't want something crazy happening here, okay? Because when a snake is about to die, is being injured, and he knows this is my last day, his last venom is the deadliest. So, if Putin knows something crazy is going to happen to Russia, his last venom would be to strike the head. And he's not going to be striking, in my opinion, he's not going to be striking Ukraine. In my opinion, okay? I may be wrong. I don't know. Look, that's just my opinion. But everybody needs to tread carefully with what they say and what they admit to, because China is doing stuff they're not admitting to. Russia is definitely doing stuff they're not admitting to. It's just what it is. Life is crazy. It's unfair most times. Just like C said, no, war isn't fair. War is not fair. Okay, kids die, women die, pregnant women die because of war. Senseless, needless war that could just be negotiated with trade deals or maybe sanctions. But we've seen that didn't work in this situation with Russia and Ukraine. So my priority is the United States. Okay. I love this country. I love the United States. I don't want anything bad happening on United States soil, which we already seen what happened in Colorado yesterday. So we don't want more crazy situation happening in the United States. We have to focus on ourselves, even when we're trying to help other people. Um, yeah, that is my take. I want to see somebody stop Putin, which I believe would be Trump. However, Trump's priority is America first. Russians did not vote for Trump. Ukrainians did not vote for Trump. They may have been happy that Trump won, but they didn't vote in the election. Americans voted for Trump. Why? Because they believe he could protect the border, bring back manufacturing, stop wars, most especially protect the homeland. So, with that being said, instead of looking, okay, bye. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. And believe in Almighty God. Shout out to the veterans. Shout out to the military personnel. You guys protect the homeland. Thank you so much. Shout out to the law enforcement officers. Thank you so much for what you do. And shout out to our esteemed members. Shout out to Ellie. Shout out to the GOAT, Luke. Shout out to Ringmaster. Shout out to Sandra. God bless you. Also, we have memberships. It is $4.99. Link should be in the description. If not, just go on the page. If you decide to join the memberships, that would be great. God bless you. And shout out to the awesome moderators tonight. Shout out to C. Shelley. God bless you. Thank you for being here every time. There was a time we got, I don't know, maybe it was some crazy situation happening on YouTube, and I had only one person watching. And the one person was, C. Shelley. Okay. So shout out to C. Shelley. God bless you for being here. You are absolutely appreciated. Shout out to the Bucket Master for the laborers. If you need your tears in buckets, okay, make sure you reach out to the Bucket Master, Mr. Booski. And of course, Enders. Shout out to Enders. He's a guitarist or a pianist, or I don't know, he does something like that in Nevada or California. I can't remember, but I know he does one of these things that I just said. Shout out to everybody. Thank you for tuning in. God bless you. God is the greatest. United States is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. I believe that. And that's why I do this. And if you're here, God bless you for being here. Derek says, shout out to Genesis. I'm late to the show. Yes, all you got to do, just like Mr. Busky told you, click on the screen and take that red line to the left. You can watch everything and have fun with us. What else? Shout out to Jet. Jet, God bless you. Jet has been consistent. Actually. Shout out to Jet. Jet has been consistent. He's been tuning in back to back. God bless you, Jet. Oh, is now. I'm sorry, Jet. Dr. Jet. Shout out to Dr. Jet. Okay, I forgot. He got his doctorate tonight. Okay. He got his doctorate tonight, courtesy of Dr. Jill Biden. All right, with that being said, God bless you. You guys are the best. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. God bless you. Thank you. And don't forget to get your Trump special at Taco Bell. Hopefully, they're going to do a Trump special, and you can get your Trump special tacos at Taco Bell. Hopefully. If they do that, the summer would be lit for sure. Lit, because everything is going wild. We need something to encourage people. I mean, people, we need to lighten up. Okay? Just look, relax, breathe. All right? Relax. And shout out to QMate. And QMate, I checked your page. You should do more shorts and reels. You should do more, okay? God bless you. I'm rooting for everybody right here. God bless everybody. Whatever you do, your businesses, God bless you. God bless your family. God bless your kids. God bless your businesses. Yeah, man. God bless you. You guys are awesome. Also, fathers, take care of your kids. Take care of your kids. All right. Please take care of your kids. I know life is hard, but these kids did not ask us to have them. All right. Regardless of what we're going through, they didn't call us on the phone and say, yo, daddy, I want to come to earth. We decided to have kids. So, fathers, please take care of your kids. Log in some hours, do the hard work and spend time with them. It's hard. It's frustrating sometimes, but do what you got to do. God is your strength. Never give up. Keep going. And if you're going through depression or whatever, seek help if you need help. Seek help if you need help, because life can be crazy, okay? You don't want to go down there, all right? So seek help if you need help, and just know that God loves you, all right? God loves you, All right. We're all going through something we cannot tell everybody. Everybody has that secret they're keeping to themselves. And it's like, sometimes you got to share it out. You got to speak it out. You got to talk to friends, family, society, join a group or whatever, you know, breathe. All right. With that being said, I love you guys, man. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. It is your boy Genesis, and I am signing out. Wait, I'll do that again. It is your boy Genesis, and I am signing out.